Have you ever struggled with motivational consistency, where you go to do something and then for some reason you stop doing it, whether it's outreach sales, meditation, running the gym? Do you ever struggle with resistance where you feel like you want to do something but something is fighting against you and holding you at the heels, just stopping you from making progress in life and business? Today's video will solve that problem for you. My name's Charlie. I've built and scaled 2 companies to 7 and multi-7 figures, an agency and a coaching business. Now I help other people do the same through this YouTube channel and paid programs. I have no course to sell you, no 997 course, no webinar, no nothing. Today's video is about raw value. It's called Trial by Fire. It's one of 7 mindset videos in a program module we have called Self-Transcendence for Paying Clients. It's a very long video. It's like 2-3 hours long or something like that, but it will basically change your life and it will give you a perspective on pain and resistance and show you how to actually do the work and make sure that you don't keep faltering off where you sit down at your desk and then the next minute you're watching YouTube procrastinating, as you may well be right now. Listen, I hope you enjoy the video and I will see you in the next one.
Hey everyone, it's Charlie Morgan here and welcome to Trial by Fire. Growth is pain and success is suffering. Today I'm going to show you how to face the pain, how to do the work, and how to suffer well. On your journey to your evolving self, you will be facing pain. It's gonna fucking hurt, okay? It's really not gonna be pleasant. Your body is gonna kick up a huge fuss. Your current sense of self is going to scream at you, and you are in for some nasty stuff. And I'm telling you that not because I'm trying to scare you away from doing what you want to do. I'm telling you because you need to expect a very long, hard, painful battle. Okay? Building a successful business and growing yourself is no pleasurable, fun task. It's fun because, well, if you get good at it, then eventually you realize you can be anyone you want. But for someone who's sort of new to this whole mindset stuff, you're going to be in for some real suffering. And I'm preparing you for that with this video. And today I'm actually going to show you how to do it, like how to do the work. Because at this point, you know who you are. You know who you need to be. You understand your paradigm. You understand your goals. And you probably also have your action items listed out and you know what you need to do. So why haven't you done it? Well, obviously it's because you've only started watching the videos recently, but you've probably been sat on things that you know you need to have done for months, weeks, years maybe. And maybe you've been putting things off. Maybe you're procrastinating. Maybe you have this self-doubt and that's why you don't do the work, or maybe you're anxious. There's all sorts of stories and reasons as to why people don't do what they should do. And in today's video, we're going to crack that code. And after this video, you will be able to do the work. You will be able to face the pain and you will be able to suffer well. It's a great quote from Epictetus that says that if I must die, but must I die bawling? And what he meant by that is, well, he's got to suffer. But does he have to suffer screaming and crying? It's the same principle in business. To build a company and to grow yourself, you have to go through pain. And I don't mean pain in terms of physical pain. I'm not going to tell you to break your leg or anything. I mean like real mental pain, like facing real resistance conjured up by your body. And so today, after this video, you shouldn't have a problem facing that pain and doing that work. So I want to prepare you because, well, you're going to be facing some pain. There's no question about it. Like any successful person can tell you that it hurts and that it's painful and it's not a fun, pleasurable journey. The outcome is fun, but the process itself really sucks. And today I'm going to walk you through why that's a good thing. And I'm also going to walk you through how to do it. So here's what we're going to cover. We're going to start with the wall of fire, the nature of resistance, slaying the dragon, eating pain or bathing in pain. Actually, that's what this module, the 4th one, will be called bathing in pain, not eating pain. It's the same premise. And then we're going to talk about the general's perspective. And so I'm going to lay out some frameworks. We're going to start by understanding pain and resistance and why you can't do what you want to do and where that comes from. And I'm going to just give you like the full picture here. We're going to really pull back the curtain on this whole pain thing, because I can't tell you how important it is to actually understand this stuff. A lot of people just like, they wake up and then like part of them doesn't want to do the work, so they kind of just don't really do it, or they start sitting down and they get distracted, or they've got some doubts about themselves, or they sabotage themselves all the time. And people just think that these are just some weird, like miraculous, like universe out to get them type problems. But it's not. It's something really specific. And if you can understand the nature of these things, you're going to absolutely crush it. So you've decided what you want. You've had some paradigm shifts, you've raised your consciousness, and you've set a trajectory to a better place. This is awesome. You're probably making some progress. You might start to recognize some different behaviors in yourself. Maybe you're starting to read books you never used to read, or you're starting to change some beliefs here and there. You've basically just become way more aware of yourself and your consciousness, and you're probably feeling pretty good. You're like, okay, I'm on the right trajectory. I'm making some progress with this mindset thing. And you probably feel pretty great. I don't want to burst your bubble, but things are about to get really, really ugly. This feeling of elation and this feeling of motivation and confidence is going to wane, because now what's going to happen is the universe is going to test you. So now that we've actually set into motion a future self and an evolving self that we can become, the universe is now going to test your mettle. It's going to see if you have what it takes to actually become this person. And this is what I mean by trial by fire. The universe is now going to put you on a trial. And the caveat to this is there's no jury, there's no judge. It's just the fire. And if you can withstand the fire and withstand the pain, then you will win the trial. But if you can't, you'll lose it. And there's no lawyer by your side to try and argue your way out of anything. You just got to face the fucking work. So the universe is going to see if you've got the mettle to withstand a trial by fire. And Newton's third law states that every action has an opposite and equal reaction. Now, I want you to remember this statement, because you've taken the action of conjuring up a new future that is positive and good for you. You've created your own version of heaven on earth. But heaven cannot exist without hell. Everything works in a duality. The path to success is paved with fire, and you've got to walk it every day to get what you want. And modern day clinical psychologists prove time and time again that life is suffering. So you've got to understand that the key to heaven is unlocked by visiting hell. So what I'm saying here is, like, for every action there's an opposite and equal reaction. So far you've taken action to basically like challenge the universe and challenge society and say, actually, I think I want to become someone else. And when you push the universe, it will push back. It will fight back. And so you cannot try to conjure up a good future without your past trying to pull you back. And if you want heaven on earth, you have to visit hell. You know, if you want pleasure, you kind of have to go through pain, unless you want fake pleasure that's not very healthy. And the universe will always resist your efforts to grow. When you try to bend the fabric of reality, it will try to snap back into shape. And it requires strength to hold it there before it solidifies. When you push, the universe pushes back. So you have to imagine like reality is like, imagine it's like a steel bar, right? And what you're doing is you're grabbing that bar and you want to bend it. You need to mold it because you want this bar to look different. And so you're grabbing it with both your hands and you're sort of like squeezing it at both ends, like bending it, and it's bending and you're starting to mold it. But for the first, for a certain amount of time, the universe is going to resist you trying to bend it. And it will take a while for that metal bar to solidify into the shape you want it to solidify in. So you have to hold it there. And every day it gets harder and more strenuous on your arms and your chest and your back. And you have to just, every day, just hold that metal bar there. And that's basically how this works. But eventually, after holding it for long enough, you can let go and the bar will have solidified. And the universe won't be fighting your efforts to grow, because the universe will have basically become what you wanted it to become. But it's only through the strength of holding it there and having that ability. And it really is, like, everyone thinks that the universe is like there for them. Everyone, like, this whole law of attraction thing is just total bollocks. Like, everyone's like, oh yeah, I'm just going to believe it and see it and therefore I will achieve it. And that's kind of not really how it works, because, well, the universe doesn't like to be bent. It doesn't like to be molded and, shaped and, pushed around. It's pretty strong, and it will try and fight back, and reality will do everything it can to maintain its current integrity. But you need to have the strength to resist that, resistance from it. And so don't make the mistake of thinking that things are going to be easy. Don't make the mistake of thinking that things are going to be straightforward and that you're going to be able to hop into this new evolving self nice and easily and it's all going to be a breeze. Don't think you can, I had a question on a coaching call once where someone was like, we were talking about beliefs, and they were like, well, why don't you just see like success as not painful? Why don't you just like not see anything as painful and just like try to believe that the suffering doesn't exist and that it's all easy? That's delusion. Pain is like the universal law of human existence in evolution and growth. And so don't make the mistake of thinking that the universe is here for you. right? It's kind of out to get you a little bit. And to be honest, it doesn't really want you to change. So if you want to change, you need to want to change more than the universe doesn't want to, if that makes sense. And this is really the clash of everything. Everyone thinks that the law of attraction is just, they have to just, fucking speak it into existence and then they'll have what they want. But then like they start speaking it and then they don't get what they want. And then they're like, well, why is it painful? It shouldn't be painful. I shouldn't have to do all this work. I should just be able to talk about it and get it. It's just a load of rubbish. And I'm recording this video to tell you that things are going to suck for you for some time. Now, I don't mean this in a negative way, because this is actually the best thing that can happen to you. But you're going to go through some pain and mental suffering. You're going to go through lots of pain and suffering. This video is not to discourage you, it's to prepare you, right? If you want the gold, it helps to know there is a dragon in the way before you set off. So you know the whole story of the knight and the dragon. He goes to slay the dragon. Imagine you're like a knight and you're going to rescue a damsel in distress, or you're going to look for gold. And you pull up to the gold and then you think, oh shit, there's a dragon in the way. I probably should have predicted that. It's kind of like, well, you have to face the dragon, but if you know it's going to be there, then you can prepare for it. And if you're worried, and if this video is making you a bit anxious and a bit nervous, and you're sort of like, well, Charlie, you've changed your tone. Like now you're telling me it's going to be really hard. Like your current emotional state is not of my concern, because it's not of the universe's concern. The universe doesn't care if you're worried about the hard work. It doesn't care if you're scared of, having to do the thing or face the pain. It really is pretty ruthless, and it doesn't give any, it doesn't care about you or your emotional state at all. So if you are worried, then the best thing you can do is just face that pain and crack on with it, because, well, it's really, I can tell you now, this is going to hurt. And I don't mean that in a negative way, and I'll explain why in a bit, but I just really want you to be prepared, and I don't want you to be surprised by, how hard this is going to get, because I promise you, that whole motivation and all this nice feeling that you've got, it will not last. Emotions like that are like a cold bath, or a warm bath, sorry. Over time, they will go cold, and you'll be sat in cold water, and it will really not be nice, but you have to stay in the bath. And understand that once you've set your eyes on a goal, the only thing standing between the goal and you is a lot of suffering. Suffering and pain, when it comes to growth, personal growth, is inevitable. And there is no other way to get what you want. Everything you want is on the other side of pain and suffering. Everything. And it's the only path. You can't go under it. You can't go over it. You can't fly around it. You can't, fucking swing yourself through it. You have to go directly through it every day. So let's teach you how to suffer well. And let's talk about the wall of fire. So I'm going to start with a metaphor to actually solidify this point. This video is kind of split into two parts. The first part is designed to give you an understanding, and then the second part is designed to give you a solution. So here's me, and well, here's who I was, right? So right now, as of me recording this, I'm making $200,000 a month, and a bit more with another company. And as you are aware, if you've watched the previous videos, which by the way, you absolutely should have, I was making nothing, and I was in my sister's art room in a freezing cold shed, basically making cold calls. And so, as we know, I've taken myself from point A to point B in the last 5 years or so. And I've been able to build myself and evolve myself into the person capable of easily achieving a multi-7-figure income. And it's easy to whack an arrow between these two and just say, hey, just turn into this new person. It's easy for anyone just to be like, yeah, so here's me and here's who I am now. You kind of just have to become someone else. Let's actually replace the arrow with something that represents what it actually takes. Because this arrow, anyone looks at that and thinks, oh, yeah, I can do that. It's just kind of growing yourself, I suppose. But let's replace the arrow with what it actually takes. And it's a big, big old wall of fire. Right, this thing here is basically just pain. To get from the left to the right, I had to walk through the middle. And this wall of fire basically just represents mental suffering and pain. And I know that I'm drilling this point home, and I know I keep repeating myself saying it's going to be hard, but I need you to know that you're going to have to do this. If you want to go from who you are now to who you want to be and who you want to evolve into so you can achieve your dreams, you're going to have to walk through a big wall of fire. And to go from who I was to who I am, I had to wade through pain. And then if I want to do this again, which I'm in the process of doing right now, guess what? I'm going to have to face more fire. So I'm not happy. I was looking at my Stripe account and make $200 grand a month, whatever. you have the same psychological makeup at that level in terms of how you perceive things with regards to growth. So I'm just as unhappy making 200 grand a month as I was making 10 grand a month. It's not really the same as when you're making nothing, because the survival instinct is so raw and brutal that it sucks. But once you're making like 200 grand a month, the psychological makeup behind that of like how you perceive how much you're making is the same. So like I could be making $1 million a month, and if I stagnate at that, I'll still be unhappy. It will still suck. And if I want to go from someone doing 200 grand a month to 2 million a month, which is what I want to do and I'm doing, then I kind of just have to go through more fire. And making these videos is part of that process, for example. And what I'm trying to tell you here is that to become someone new, you must face pain. During this transformation, you must live, eat, and breathe pain. Pain is now your best friend. Suffering is now your closest ally. These are the things that are required. We don't want to hate them. We don't want to despise them. We don't want to avoid them. We don't want to evade them. We don't want to run from them. We want to live, eat, and breathe them, because they are the only way we can get what we possibly want. And these are growing pains. And the wall of fire is real and it exists. You can't fly over it, you can't dig under it, you can't go around it, you can't pretend it isn't there. It's there, and the only way to get to the other side is to go through it. By going through it and coming out the other side, you complete the trial by fire that the universe has set for you. Right? So when you remember, you're who you are now, you've set an evolving self. Now we've got a gap. To bridge the gap, the only way is to walk through the fire. And this is why I've called this video Trial by Fire. Because like the universe is now going to set a test for you, and it's going to be like, okay, you want this? Well, let's see if you deserve it. The only way to get what you want is to deserve what you want. And the only way to deserve what you want is to put up with enough pain and suffering. How much you deserve something is really dependent upon like really how much pain you've put into it, right? If you look at someone that's where you want to be, if you just strip away like what they've actually done to get there, you'll see they're just sat on a mountain of pain, basically. And once you come out the other side, the universe will reward you with what you want, but only if you go through the fire. I want you to come to terms with this right now. I want you to accept the fact that this journey and transformation will be painful, agonizing, and will hurt to complete. But that's the price of growth and freedom, and you better pay it. So take a pen and paper and just write down, I know this is going to hurt, right? Because the worst thing you can possibly do now is have delusion and think that you're going to just breeze through this and it's going to be a nice, easy thing. And I know this might sound negative, but I'm telling you the truth. I'm not making these videos to tell you what you want to hear. I could just say, yeah, it's going to be great and then amazing. I'm telling you because, well, I'd rather share the truth with you, and you might not like me for it, but I don't mind. I'm just telling you what you need to hear, not what you want to hear. And the sole and only reason for your failure will be if you're not willing to face the fire and walk through it every day. The only way you can fail is when you try and step out of the fire. You won't know how long you have to sit in the fire for, nor will you have any indication as to when it will be over. You can be a meter away from the end and then decide on the last day that you're not going to face it and then get reset back to the start. So if you're trial by fire, you have to walk like a mile, you could literally get to the last 30 centimeters or a couple of yards and then be like, oh, it's too painful. And then, you hop out of the fire and then you'll reset back to the beginning. The fire represents pain. It represents discomfort, anxiety, fear, doubt, and any other negative or neurotic emotion. Coming to terms with the fact you're going to have to undergo the trial by fire to get what you want is a good place to start. Many people, they start their journey and they find it's painful and they quit, mostly because they didn't expect it. Humans, we have incredible pain tolerances. It is remarkable what you can put a human through before they break. And the worst thing that you can do is that people break easily. I mean break if someone tries to do something that's painful and then they don't do it, it's because they think it's going to be easy. It's because their brain is trying to trick them into this delusion. The brain doesn't want to change, and so it's I'm going to make this person think this is going to be a fucking walk in the park, and then they'll find out it's not, and then they won't want to walk in the park. But in spite of what I've said, it's possible to walk through this and come out the other side. It sucks, but it's possible. And I know because I've done it time and time again, and so has any other successful person you know about. So we have to walk through fire to evolve. It's kind of like your evolving self is forged in fire. It's forged in pain. And pain is kind of like I don't know, it's going to give you a weird metaphor here, but it's just come to mind. So imagine that like your evolving self is like a cake, right? And you're trying to make this cake, and pain and suffering are the two ingredients that actually bake the cake, right? And it's a bit of a weird one, but I'm just going to try and give you as many angles as I can to really drill this point home. You need to expect it. So how do we pluck up the courage to walk through and actually face the fire? I want to tell you something reassuring. You have the human spirit. Human beings are incredibly capable of doing incredible things. You have the ability to face pain. You have the ability to suffer well. You have the ability to walk through the fire. You can actually do it. And I'm not telling you this because I want to be some sort of woo-wah guru, like, yeah, you can do it. Like, I'm actually telling you, if you're a human being, you can walk through the fire. You absolutely can. Human beings have been doing this shit for years, hundreds of thousands of years, if not longer. The animal within us, the spirit within us, is more than capable of facing pain and growing and evolving. And you might think, oh, I'm just different, like I can't do it. No. At a base level, we are all the same. We all have the human spirit. It's just a question of whether or not you've forgotten you've got it. And we need to understand the nature of this fire. So let's talk about the nature of resistance. So now that I've laid this out for you, I've set some expectations and I've told you it's going to be painful, and I've given you some metaphors to understand like what you've got to walk through to make this happen. I want to help you understand the nature of fire, which is basically the nature of resistance. This has taken me 5 years of critical thought to figure out. This video alone took me about 2 weeks to put together because of how much thought I had to put into the next few slides. Breaking this down and explaining it is probably one of the most cognitively consuming things I've ever done. And what I'm going to tell you now is profound, right? The nature of resistance, understanding this thing, not just like at the surface level of being like, yeah, you've got to do hard work and it's going to suck. But actually pulling that apart like we did with the nature of aim, for example. Let's hop into that. So in pursuit of your goal, you're going to face resistance. We can change fire with resistance, but I use the word fire because everyone knows what fire is. Not many people know what resistance is at its core. It's true that, well, it's the resistance is the true enemy of your goal, and you have to face it every day. It's the source of everything painful. And if we can understand what resistance is and how it operates as a force within us, then we can beat it. So resistance is like this force. I'm going to explain it now. So resistance it's an internal sensation that is more powerful than any external force in stopping you from achieving your goals. Resistance is the thing that stops you from getting what you want. It's the voice in your head that says you aren't good enough or strong enough or motivated enough to start your journey. It is a faceless, formless, and heartless energy with the sole purpose of ensuring you never start the work that will lead to your true nature and your true self. In this picture, it's not the rock, the gravity, or the incline of the mountain that's hard. It's the doubts of the person carrying it and the fears that person harbors and the pain they feel. It's just, all we're looking at here on the right is a steep face and a rock and gravity. That's not the resistance. The resistance is what's going on between the ears of the person carrying it. It's that person's doubts. Because like when you think about a good metaphor for this, or a good way to perceive this, is when you think about how hard it is to send cold emails or how hard it is to do a sales call, all you're doing is asking questions or tapping away on a keyboard. It's never the actual sort of physical attributes of the activity that generate the resistance. It's always the human being that generates the resistance doing the activities. So drill this point home. When you look at this on the right, you might think, God, that looks tough, but it's not. It's the rock and the face of the mountain. They are not the resistance. The resistance is generated by the person pushing the rock up the hill. And it's important to realize that when facing resistance, it's you that produces it. Inanimate objects and actions do not produce resistance. So here's, like I said, with cold email. So if you feel resistance or doubts, or if you feel like it's hard for you to do cold emails or cold messaging, well, look at this. All you're doing with cold email or cold messaging is clicking buttons on a mouse and keyboard on a screen, copying and pasting bits of data and text and then pressing send. If I asked you to do this for half an hour, you'd feel no resistance at all, except from maybe some boredom. Like, imagine if all you had to do, like with cold email and cold messaging and stuff, is open up 2 Google Docs and then copy and paste a line from one Google Doc into another Google Doc and just do that for half an hour, you wouldn't have any resistance towards doing that. Now, you might think it's a bit boring, but you wouldn't have self-doubt about your ability to do it. It wouldn't make you anxious. It wouldn't terrify you. It's only because the act of clicking on our keyboard in this way contributes to our goal and a better future that we feel resistance. So it's never like the actions and the things that you need to do are not the things that are resisting you. It's how you perceive those things, and it's the emotional baggage that you tie to those things. It's like cold calling. People are terrified of cold calling. But when you boil it down, all you're doing is tapping numbers on a screen, pressing a green button, listening to a voice, and then telling that voice and like articulating some words, and then the person ending the call. That's all a cold call is. It's not like when you actually observe like the action, that's not the thing that creates the resistance. It's the human variable is the thing that creates the resistance and the pain. So any action that you need to take in business or anything you need to do to grow yourself, it's never the thing. It's kind of like you can't really liken it too much to exercise, but you could potentially. It's kind of like if you're running, right? All you're doing is putting one foot in front of the other. That's like, it's not a huge thing, but then eventually your body creates the resistance and you start to feel it. And so it's never the action, especially in business, especially when it comes to doing things to grow your business, like sales calls. People feel resistance towards like asking questions. It's like all you're doing is just saying words and then putting a little inflection on the end so it denotes that you want someone to respond with an answer. It's not hard to do. It's just your perception of it that creates it resistance. So like I said with sales calls, I just gave you that example. All you're doing is asking questions and explaining what you do, right? So sales calls is literally just questions and an explanation. You do this all the time in the real world. You know how to ask questions. You know how to explain how things work. You speak all the time. You ask questions all the time. It's like the act of sales is not what produces resistance. There is the objective action, and then there is the subjective resistance associated with the action. And think about it. All cold calling is like I said, dialing a number and talking to someone. That's it. It's not like all the resistance and fear you feel is a product of you, not a product of the action or the activity itself. So like, you might feel some resistance towards watching these mindset videos. But like when you boil down watching a mindset video, all you're doing is sitting down. You sit down every day and then you're staring at a screen and listening to a voice. That's all you're doing. But if you feel resistance towards doing that, that's on you. It's not the thing that's producing the resistance, you're producing it. It's a projection. So I want you to sort of like start seeing the activities you resist for what they are, not who you are, and they'll get really easy. So like, it's like kind of like instead of being like I'm going to send cold emails today, it's like I'm going to copy and paste the same message 30 times into another Google tab and press a blue send button. That's all you're doing, right? But when you attach the words cold email, all this shit starts to come in. So let's drill down and understand the principles of resistance, because I want to really help you understand what this is. So principle 1, there is an enemy working against you, resistance, right? It's a force that you generate. It's an intelligent, malevolent, and nasty force that is basically like created by you to resist the thing. Now it's kind of, you don't intentionally create this, and I'm going to explain where it comes from later on, but you have to understand that like if you sit down to do something and do some work and you don't do it, then there's resistance at play. The enemy is relentless. It aims to kill your desired reality and quash all your hopes and dreams. The enemy is produced by a fragment of you. You are not the enemy. It's a force of nature produced by you, but you can't help it, just like a pulse. Kind of just like it's inside of you. It's kind of just like your heart beating or your lungs breathing. It's just a force of nature. You must duel yourself. You are the knight and the dragon, and war is inevitable, and the knight must win. So what I mean here is it's you against you. You produce the resistance, but you also want to fight the resistance. So all of the issues and problems you have are created by yourself and your brain. Goals come first, resistance comes second. There cannot be a shadow without an object and the sun. And resistance can be overcome with pain, love, and assistance, which is the opposite of resistance. It is beatable, okay? So to the 6th point here, with how resistance, like in order for, like it comes back to this for actions and reactions. So for every action, there's an opposite and equal reaction. So setting a goal is an action, and feeling resistance towards doing things to achieve that goal is the reaction of you setting the goal. So you can't really have goals without resistance. Resistance cannot exist without a goal, and a goal cannot exist without resistance. So you produce the goal, but then you also produce the resistance towards that goal. It's kind of just how this thing works. It's like a duality, and resistance can be overcome. So how can we see resistance? Is it a force that acts behind the scenes, pulling the strings of reality? We only have to look as far as our emotions, thoughts, fears, and desires. So if this isn't making too much sense and you need something concrete to understand resistance, this will help you. So we can't see resistance. It's an invisible force, but what we can see is how it manifests. So putting your finger on what resistance actually is really hard, but putting a finger on like the symptoms of resistance is really easy. So what forms does resistance take? Well, I've actually listed 30. This is by no means a definitive list, but I believe these to be the most common. And I'm going to explain all 30 forms of resistance, and the ones that resonate with you, or the ones that you resonate with, I want you to make a note because we're going to be revisiting them. So here's you, and you know you need to do the work. You've set a goal, and now you need to start taking actions towards accomplishing that goal. But then what starts to happen is resistance gets in the way. And so what I've done here is I've kind of just listed off as many sort of common resistance forms as I could possibly find. And a lot of these I used to find in myself, and I had to overcome them. So starting from the top and then moving right. I can't do the work because of a routine or entitlement, fear, judging, burnout, opinions, uncertainty, pain avoidance, instant gratification, doubt, anxiety, rationalization, learning, comfort, research, perfection, waiting, justifying, warp priorities, distractions, support, feeling vulnerable, addiction, criticism, denial, drama, procrastination, self-love, self-loathing, and identity, routine, etc., etc. So all of these here are forms of resistance, and they might not make sense to you at the moment, but resistance is like when you produce something that stops you from doing the thing that you need to do to accomplish your goal. And next time you find yourself not doing the work, I guarantee that it's because the resistance is present. And resistance will be manipulating you with one of these things. So it's like this force, and it's kind of like it's quite protean. It will take any form, any of the forms you can see on the screen here, and there might be more inside yourself. That's how resistance will begin to manifest. It's kind of like it's like this weird sort of like, I don't know, like a force. And how do you explain resistance? This is why it's taken me so long. I can understand like how it works, but like explaining it, it's kind of like it molds itself basically. So it's like a really weird force inside of you that doesn't really exist until it actually comes to fruition through one of these things on the screen as a vehicle. And then you feel it, and then that's how it basically presents itself. And so not doing the work is defined as not doing what you know you should be doing. So this is when resistance is in play. And the first step to crushing resistance is awareness, and the second step is intolerance. So now let's actually become aware of this resistance in you. And this might seem strange. You might be like, Charlie, what the hell are you talking about? But it'll make sense in a second. So what I'm going to do now is list off all the forms of resistance that we have and how this force manifests and controls you to stop you from doing the work. So the first one is fear, and this is most common. This is not working because you're afraid of what happens if you do. Instant gratification, not working because you want or expect instant gratification elsewhere in your life. So if you're someone who is constantly looking for like immediate dopamine hits and instant gratification, and you go to work and then you can't work because you're so used to instant gratification, then resistance has been working on you for years to build neural patterns that prevent you from doing anything that delays gratification. Doubt, not working because you have doubts about yourself, or that doubting that it's even possible. So if you feel like if one day you're falling asleep and then suddenly you start having all these doubts flying about in your mind, thinking, God, is that even possible? Should I even bother? That's resistance, right? That sort of self-talk, or that horrible dread feeling you get of wondering whether or not what you're trying to achieve is actually possible. That's resistance. All of these things that you see on the screen, all of them, they all come under the category of resistance. They're all sort of the same energy and the same force. But people think that like Self-doubt is separate from fear, which is separate from like comfort and perfection. But it's all it's like, okay, here's how you phrase it. Resistance is the universe. The universe is a universal currency of prevention for change. That's how you articulate it. And so all of the things you see here, like resistance is at play, and resistance is the currency, and it kind of just buys shit in this way. Doubt, anxiety, rationalization. So anxiety, not working because it makes you feel nervous, anxious, or uncomfortable. Rationalization, not working because you've rationalized not to do it. Learning, not working because you want to learn more about the thing first. Research, not working because you want to do some more research first. Comfort, not working because you feel comfortable right now and don't want to feel uncomfortable. Like comfort and doubt and fear are basically the same thing. Perfection, everything, all of these things are the same thing, just manifested in different forms. They feel different and they look different, and you can look at them and you think, oh, that's weird, and I've got this doubt over here, and then over here I want this thing to be perfect before I do it, and over here I want to do some more research before I dive into it. And they feel different. So you think you've got all these different things playing you and manipulating you to not take action. But all of them are just resistance, just taking many different forms. And it's kind of like wearing many different hats and faces, if that makes sense. You think they're different things, but they're all the same thing, I promise you. Perfection, not working because you want everything to be perfect before starting or waiting for perfect conditions. Waiting, not working because you'd rather wait to see if things change. Justifying, not working because you've justified not to work. Warped priority, not working on the main thing because you think you should be working on something else. So this is like when people like, they need to do outreach and then they're like, oh, I feel like I should be doing my website today, or I feel like I should be doing like some blog posts today. That's resistance. That's no different from self-doubt as to whether or not your thing is going to work. They look different, but it's the same force acting. Distraction, not working because that thing keeps distracting you. So it's like, oh, I'm just constantly on YouTube. It's not YouTube that's the problem. It's like resistance is manifesting a distracted version of you that keeps clicking on YouTube. Being distracted by YouTube is that you're being, the strings of yourself are being pulled by the same thing that generates the self-doubt, the anxiety, everything else. Can't stress this enough. Support. This is a big one. Not working because you don't have the support or a fucking accountability partner. Like people are like, oh, I can't really do this because I haven't got an accountability partner, or I can't really do this because I haven't got the support network. This is resistance in plain sight. People think it's this nice, pretty thing. It's like, oh, I just want to get an accountability partner before I start. I can't do my outreach if I haven't got my accountability partner. It's resistance. It's just there. It's manipulating you and persuading you. It knows you very well. It is you, basically. And so it will do everything it can to pull the wool over your eyes. Feeling vulnerable, not working because it makes you feel vulnerable or psychologically exposed. Addiction, not working because you're addicted to something other than working. People are like, I'm addicted to video games, so I can't work. It's resistance, right? Your brain doesn't want to do the work because it doesn't want to change, and so it gives you an addiction. It's the same force that generates the doubt, that generates everything else. Criticism, not working because you've criticized others that do the work instead of being critical of others instead. So if you're constantly judging people who work hard, then you're not going to work hard because you're afraid of being judged. It's a mirror. And so if your brain is generating these judgments, then it's actually resistance at play because the resistance knows that by judging other people, you're not going to want to do the work yourself. And so it's resistance that's generated that. It's like this universal form that generates every other thing that stops you from working. Denial, not working because you're in denial, refusing to see and accept the truth. Drama, not working because you're drawn to, create, or move to drama in your personal life. Procrastination, not working because you're putting it off till tomorrow. This is a big one, right? Resistance is just like, yeah, we'll just do it tomorrow instead. Fuck that. Self-love, not working because it makes you feel stupid and a bit of self-hatred. So this is a big one. Like when people start working and then they're not very good at what they're working on. So they're like, oh, I need to love myself. I need to be doing things that like I'm good at, so I love myself. Self-loathing, not working because you hate yourself. So if you hate your current situation and self, and like what will happen is you won't do the work because you don't feel like you're worth the work, because you don't feel like you're worth a new future. This is resistance. Identity trap, not working because working would not be me. Routine, not working because you didn't have your latte this morning, you didn't sleep very well. People like wake up and they're like, oh, I checked my Oura ring and I got an hour less deep sleep than usual, so I'm just going to take the afternoon off. Resistance. Entitlement, not working because you think you're entitled to not and that work is beneath you. Resistance. Judging, not working because you're too busy judging people that are. Resistance. Burnout, not working because you think you're too burned out to work. Resistance. Although this is a caveat to this, sometimes you will have burnout because You do have genuine biological limits, but they generally take like months of disgusting work to actually accomplish. So most people think they're burned out, but they're just weak. Opinions, not working because you told someone, or because someone told you not to, or to take a day off. So sometimes like people they'll get up and they'll feel a bit tired, they don't want to do the work, and then they'll text like their mum or something and be like, hey, I feel tired. And then their mum will be like, oh, well, take the day off, honey. And then they take the fucking day off. Resistance. Uncertainty, not working because you're not sure how. Ambiguity is resistance. Pain avoidance, not working because work hurts. Resistance. All of these are the same thing. If we go around this circle again, it's like I said, resistance is the universe's universal currency for prevention to change. And so when you try to build a future for yourself and imagine a better version of yourself and your evolved self and try and start, escaping your current situation to achieve your goal, this is what the universe will throw at you. It's the same, it's made of the same stuff. Anxiety might look different to drama and addiction, and burnout might look different to distraction, or justifying might look different to identity, or entitlement might look and feel different to instant gratification, but it's all made of the same stuff, right? It's all made of the same ingredient, which is resistance. And so you may not have a problem with addiction. You may not need to have support to work. You may not need to, you may not feel comfortable, and that's why you're not working. Maybe it's not that. But I can guarantee, looking at the screen here, you should be able to pinpoint your manifests of resistance and your symptoms of resistance. Kind of like resistance is a disease, and then everything you see on the screen here is like a vehicle for resistance to rear its ugly head. And so through them again: fear, instant gratification, doubt, anxiety, rationalization, learning, research, comfort, perfection, waiting, justification, warp priorities, distraction, support, feeling vulnerable, addiction, criticism, denial, drama, procrastination, self-love, self-loathing, identity traps, routine, entitlement, judging, burnout, opinions, uncertainty, pain avoidance. It's all made of the same stuff. It's all made of resistance, and this is how resistance manifests. I can't stress this enough. This is so important to understand, because what happens is people start buying this shit. So like one day they wake up and then they feel vulnerable because they have to do a sales call and they feel afraid. Like, oh, I don't want to feel vulnerable. So then they buy it and they're like, it's kind of just like, yeah, I didn't do the sales call because it made me feel a bit vulnerable. I don't want to feel vulnerable. Or it's kind of like, I just feel like I'm not going to do it today because I had this huge doubts last night and I'm just not sure if it's even possible, so I'm not going to try. Resistance, same thing. So now we've got a resource for defining your primary resistance forms. So now what we need to do is become brutally, honestly aware of how resistance is manifesting in your life. Because I can tell you right now, it's manifesting. And it will always be manifesting. It manifests in me. It manifests in Elon Musk. Well, maybe not, because that guy's like a fucking robot. But every human that tries to do anything better or tries to create a future or achieve a goal, they will face resistance. And so I've listed them all out here, right? We've got them all here. And now what I want you to do is this will be available in the resources section. So you can either print this out or you can click here to go to Google, to go to the Google Doc. And if you just come in here and go to File, like this, and make a copy, you can make your own copy, okay? But this is really important. Don't skip through this. Don't think, I don't have resistance, it's something else. It is resistance. If you're not where you want to be, it's because you are listening to resistance and you're buying resistance, and you're basically just listening to this force within you, okay? So we need to bring it to your awareness. So what I want you to do now is note your primary resistance forms and some examples. So really think about it. Don't just do this in 2 minutes. Don't just print this off, or don't just write this down and just do it on a whim. Take some real time. Take long critical reflection on this to list how resistance is manifesting in your brain and in your life. And if you can't think of any, then you're blind, right? If you can't think of how resistance is working in you, then that is resistance itself. So you'd put blindness, because if you can't think and if you can't see it, then that's a form of resistance, because resistance doesn't want to be exposed. It wants to stay under the covers. And so it will start to play you like a fiddle and play like a puppet and tell you that it doesn't exist and that it's something else. And if you're convinced that resistance doesn't exist and that it's something else, and that I'm wrong, and that it's not the question of whether I'm right or wrong or not, it's just the question of the fact that this thing does exist in you and it exists in everyone. If you can't see it, then that's resistance basically playing you. If you can't see that, then there's not much I can do to help you. And so just think back to when you needed to do something you knew you needed to do but didn't. right? Why didn't you? That's the only question you've got to ask yourself here. So there must be tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, maybe not hundreds of thousands, that's quite a lot, but there must be thousands and thousands and thousands of examples in your life where you knew you should do something or you wanted to do something, but you didn't or couldn't. And you have to ask yourself, why didn't you? And if you can't think of, what is this, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. If you can't think of 9 examples of this, like, God help you. Have some real thinking here. I actually gave you some of my own here. So what you want to do now, before you look at mine, is I want you to give some context to the resistance forms. So start by listing them off. There might be more than 9. You might find less than 9. Just the main ones, you'll know what the top 3 are. Like, everyone's got like the top 3. But list as many as you can, and then give some context. So give some examples once you've listed these ones here. So here's some examples of me. These, just to be transparent and vulnerable with you, like I face resistance every day. I get up and part of me doesn't want to grow. It's natural. I have it, you have it, everyone has it, right? But what I wanted to do is share some with you so you can understand how it works within me. So here's my resistance forms. So the first one is burnout, right? Resistance has a tendency to convince me that I'm close to burnout and should stop working. The truth is that I once burned out horrifically, and I'm afraid of seeing that happen again. So I burned out before, and it was not pleasant. I was disassociated from reality. I had brain fog for 2 months. I had panic attacks all the time. I really took myself to the knife's edge of my biological limits, and it did not treat me well. And so now I've got this tendency for resistance to convince me that I'm close to that same thing again, when I'm usually never. Pain avoidance. Sometimes resistance tries to overwhelm me by manipulating me into thinking that I need to work, that the thing I need to work on will be really painful. So for example, the mindset module, the irony behind this is it's not painful at all. So I had this with this video specifically, very ironically and paradoxically. I had huge resistance towards making this video, probably because it's kind of like you're exposing the thing, and that's why. But I was convinced this was going to be the most painful, agonizing, long, disgustingly difficult module to make. And I realized, I was like, well, this is ironic, isn't it? This is just the resistance thing at play, because now you're actually talking about how to overcome the thing, so it's really going to start to kick up a fuss. And the irony is that making the module wasn't painful at all. Like I said, it's literally just sitting down, thinking, and then typing up slides and putting some things together. I do that all the time. It was just me that made it feel painful. And routine. Resistance has persuaded me that I need to complete a lengthy morning routine to focus and get work done, convincing me I need to meditate to work well, etc. I don't really struggle with this anymore, but I used to think that if I hadn't slept perfectly and if I hadn't eaten a certain type of food, then I wouldn't be able to work. And that's just another form of resistance. Reliance is resistance. Denial. Resistance often has me in denial, thinking I can act in stupid ways and get away with it. I'll often deny the truth. So for example, I might be on Sunday afternoon, I'll want to sit down and watch YouTube all day and just spend a whole 6 hours just binging out and gorging out on dopamine. And sometimes resistance would be well, if you do that, you deserve it, it's fine, it won't really matter, but it always matters. Learning. Resistance makes me think I need to learn a lot about something before I can start taking action on it. Comfort. Resistance takes the form of extreme comfort, telling me I'm doing well, making me feel pride and happy with my situation, negating action. This is the biggest one for me right now, to be transparent with you, is resistance is manifesting in me by convincing me that I'm doing well and that I should feel proud and that I should be able to start relaxing and kicking back and enjoying the fruits of my labor. That's how this thing is currently manifesting. And it's strong, and I'm working through it. Unfortunately enough, I am familiar enough with resistance and its different forms to know how to overcome stuff like this, because I overcame it when I started making 6 figures. But just becoming aware of this is just so powerful. So make a note of your main forms of resistance now, and then also give some context and some examples so you can start to become more aware. Now, this will be hard. It's not easy to do because resistance doesn't want to be exposed, because it knows that exposure is the first step to death for itself. And so you need to take some time to really get into the nuts and bolts of this. But I guarantee, man, you've probably got the fear, you've probably got the doubt, you probably want to learn but more before you take action. You're probably justifying not doing it. You're probably prioritizing other stuff. You're probably getting distracted. You probably think you need support from people. You're probably in denial about things. You probably look for drama to escape the drama at work. You're probably procrastinating. You probably think you need this routine. You probably have a tendency to judge people who are working really hard sometimes, maybe. Pain avoidance is always going to be there, but everyone just thinks stuff's more painful than it is. So yeah, that's the big one. And have a look at this and drill into it, and it will help you, because now what's going to happen is, like, when you sit down to do the work, and when you actually sort of wake up one day and you're like going to go and start taking action, resistance will like march forward, and it will present itself, and it will present itself as a thought or an emotion or a feeling. And you'll notice it and be like, oh, hello, resistance, fuck you. And then you'll get to work. And that's what I do every day. That's literally like, sometimes I'll get up and then I'll wake up at 7 and then my alarm will go off, and then like resistance will be like, oh, let's just stay in bed. And I'm like, oh, hi, resistance, fuck off. And then I just get up, and it will tell me all sorts of stuff to try and keep me in bed, but I just don't listen. I don't listen to that force. I am more powerful than it. And you can be too. You just need to practice. It's kind of just like anything. Just resisting resistance and withstanding resistance is kind of just like a muscle. You just need to like work on it over time. And sometimes it'll get you. It'll beat you sometimes. But we need to try and, like, how quickly you progress and achieve success will depend on how often you beat or lose to resistance. So someone that like is plateaued and stays where they are basically wins 50% of the time and loses 50% of the time. Someone that makes a little bit of progress will win against resistance 60% of the time and will lose 40% of the time. Someone that makes insane fast progress will win 90% of the time and lose 10% of the time. And someone that just completely smashes it out of the park will always beat resistance. But that's kind of hard. And that might just be a belief that I've got. But from my perspective, like, sometimes it's going to get you, right? You're never going to be on guard at all points, but you really don't want to be, losing the battle that often. You want to try and like beat the thing like, 9 times out of 10, because that's how you make exponential progress. But for people that slip back and start making like regressions in their life, it's because they only beat resistance like 30% of the time, and then 70% of the time resistance beats them. So I quoted this out. So resistance is the universe's universal currency. And this currency is used to buy prevention of positive change. And so this currency will cash its chips into your head, and it will manifest doubt. It will manifest fear. It will make you think you need to put things off. It will make you think you need things to be perfect. It will send you towards drama. It will make you judge people who are doing what you want to do. It is always going to be there, and now you're aware of it, and now you know how it works. And I'm hoping that this gives you a sense of clarity on why you're facing what you're facing. So next time you have self-doubt, or next time you think something's going to be painful, don't take that at face value. See it for what it truly is, right? Like, you want resistance to be the emperor with no clothes, so to speak. You want to really reveal back what you're looking at for what it truly is, and just notice like, oh, it's just that bloody resistance thing. And it will always be that. You just need to have the consciousness and awareness to recognize it. So next time you go to sit down to do some outreach, and you start trying to, do something else like YouTube, or you start thinking, I'll just send some later, just be like, oh, hello, resistance. Just recognizing it is enough to overcome it, genuinely. Like, just not buying the front that it gives you and looking at the back is the main thing, because that's like, then you'll just be like, oh shit, well, I'm not going to tolerate it. So I said the second step is intolerance, but really like it is just awareness, because once you become aware of it, you're like, okay, well, there's a resistance thing. I'm not going to buy it. And so I want to give you a quick note on responsibility and why it's still your fault, because now what can happen is like you might start to blame resistance. So you might like, I don't want you to do this, because the mistake you could make is, now that you know that resistance is this sort of force within you that you can't really get rid of and you just have to fight, it's very easy to fall into the trap of blaming resistance. And if you remember earlier in the modules, we talked about how everything's your fault. So I don't want you to make the mistake of thinking you're not where you want to be because of resistance. As per the previous modules, it is still your fault for where you are. If you like, whether or not you beat resistance is up to you. It's your fault if you lose. It's your fault if you win. It's not your fault resistance exists. It's your fault if you give into it, right? Resistance is a force of nature. It will always be present, but we must never blame resistance as the reason why we aren't where we want to be. Resistance can always be overcome, and you are still always to blame. It's easy to turn and point the finger to resistance and say, oh, okay, so now that I know this resistance thing's here, that's why I'm not where I want to be. Or it's procrastination, this resistance is just so strong, or my self-doubt is the reason. You must remember that these aren't the things to blame. It's the fact you didn't fight back that is the reason. So don't go pointing the finger at this force, because, well, it's there and it can dictate your life if you let it, but only if you let it. So now we know what resistance is and what form it takes, let's understand why it exists. Right? This is where things get really fucking fun, because a lot of people now think like it's just this force and it's just there, and yeah, okay, Charlie, you've explained that you can't really have a goal without having resistance towards the goal. Seems counterintuitive. Why can't I just have a goal and just go and get it? Well, this is where things get fun, because understanding the genesis and the conception of the resistance itself will make you even more, what would you say, determined in your approaches to overcoming it. So where does resistance come from? Well, pain is where resistance meets effort. So when you feel pain, and when you're in a painful, suffering situation, when you're working, when you're making cold calls and it really hurts, or when you're sending cold emails and you feel like just even clicking the button like hurts your hand. I've had that before, right? Where I'm sending cold emails and I feel like my muscles hurt, but it's just resistance, just trust me. Pain is where resistance meets effort, and pain is where compliance meets resistance with time. So this is a good point. I'm going to talk about where resistance comes from in a second, but first of all, I want to talk about pain here really quickly, because there's two types of pain. Pain, you can have the healthy pain, the productive pain, which is where you meet resistance with effort, or you can have the unhealthy pain, which is basically where resistance meets compliance. So you have two choices. You can face the resistance now and put effort into overcoming it and feel pain now for reward later. Right? And that's how you want to do it. Alternatively, you can face resistance now, but not face it at all and just have compliance with it and feel pleasure now, but pain later. And you have to choose. Do you want pain now, glory later, or delusion now and pain later? Right? Everyone has this tendency to just like they face resistance and then they just comply with it, and then they feel good for now because like whatever, like they don't have to face the pain. The absence of pain is pleasure quite often. And so you have to decide. So let's talk about this. Why does this wall of fire exist? You know, why does this pain exist? Why do we have to face it? Well, obviously it's because of resistance. We know that we now know enough about this wall of fire to know that it's not like, obviously it's not like physical flames or petrol burning or anything. It's actually resistance itself. And the fire represents the pain you feel when you lock your horns with resistance and start fighting it. So the fire is pain. Pain is where resistance meets effort. And when you have resistance and effort, pain is created. And that's basically defined as a uncomfortable mental sensation as a result of these two things being alloyed together. But why is there resistance in the first place? Why can't we just walk through like a nice little field, or just swim through a nice little open lake to get to where we want? Why do we have to walk through metaphorical fire? And why do we have to put ourselves through so much pain and agony? Why is there resistance? Why can't we just like do like a quick light jog through a meadow with, you know, flowers and shit? Why do we have to go through the pain? Well, resistance comes from your current self and what I call its survival bias. This is what is to blame for the resistance. It's not what is to blame for like your lack of success. Well, actually it is your current self, right? We know that's true. But resistance is a manifest of your current self. Let me explain. So the self's psychological survival bias. Your current sense of identity and self, your ego, is just like any living organism. It has a survival bias. It has a bias towards survival. It wants to survive. It wants to live, not die. So all successful species and all successful organisms have a survival bias, which means all their behavior and all of their sort of physical manifests of activity are geared towards helping them survive. That's really why, if you look at how like any animal does anything, really, or any organism does anything, it's all based on survival and reproduction. That's it, really. It's every action it takes is geared towards those two things. And understand that your goal threatens the survival of your current self. Setting a goal that requires you to become someone new and building your evolved self on paper is like putting your new self into a kickboxing to the death match with your current self. So you have who you are right now, your current self, whether you like it or not. You probably don't like it. That's why you want to change. When you set a goal, we now know that to accomplish and achieve a goal, we have to become he or she who can. What that means is we have to kill off our current self to step into the shoes of the new person. And so you cannot have your current self and your new self, right? At the end of the day, one of them has to win, one of them has to die. It's sort of like it's a zero-sum game. They can't both survive. And so when you create a goal and when you start to try to become someone else, you've just thrown your new self into a boxing ring with your current self. But this boxing match is not fought with gloves. Your current self fights with resistance. It's psychological warfare. It will throw kicks of self-doubt, hooks of anxiety, roundhouses of fear, and jabs of comfort, alongside a whole different arsenal of psychologically manipulative moves. So you have to imagine that when you create a goal and try to become someone else, you're stepping into a boxing ring with who you currently are, and the main weaponry that person has in their arsenal as an opponent with their fists up and, they're going to start beating you up, it's resistance. Resistance is what they use to fight. Your new self has one weapon, and that is the work. And this is the best way. Realizing this and coming to this conclusion after a while, I was like, holy shit, that makes sense. Your new self fights with the work, and your current self fights with resistance. So all this comes down to this whole thing, this whole module, self-transcendence, is what is stronger? Your ability to work or your current self's ability to resist? That's it. We boil it down to those two things. And now that you've heightened your consciousness, set a goal and started taking action towards growing into a new version of yourself, your current self is going to kick at, spit, scream at, shout at, abuse, and seduce you. Your current self, your current identity as this living, breathing, psychologically tangible thing is going to do everything in its power to survive. And the only thing it can do in its power is resistance, right? It doesn't really have any other tools or things to use. And so it takes one of these 30 things or multiple of these 30 things and starts throwing them at you to try and survive. It will do everything in its power to survive. It has no moral code, and it will go to any length necessary to maintain its life. It will lie to you, manipulate you, make you doubt yourself, panic you, scare you, seduce you, make you comfortable, everything. You name it, it will do it. The thing about the current self is it knows you. It knows like your mind and your brain and what that wants because it's basically built it. And so it will give you like hell, and it will really throw things at you because it knows you so well that it knows that if it puts YouTube in front of you, then you're going to click on it because that's what it's built your dopamine pathways to want. And so it's hard to beat. It's possible to beat, but it's your only opponent in life. And fortunately enough, we've taken lengths to understand it. We understand its traits, we understand its habits, we understand its beliefs, we understand its patterns and its troughs and its peaks. We now also understand its main forms of resistance. So we're starting to build it. This is why everything has been leading up to this, right? Everything that I've done so far has been leading up to this slide, right? And understanding it. It's kind of like, imagine that when you try to start becoming someone else, it's kind of like you've cornered a honey badger. The current self is the honey badger, or it's like a lion or something, and you put it in a corner, and now you've got to try and kill it. But that thing has got teeth and it's got claws and it's fast and it will just do everything it can to tear you apart. And you may have already noticed it to kick in, right? You've probably already noticed, and if you haven't yet, you will, I promise. The late night thoughts, the wondering if it's worth it, the questions, the doubts, the fears, the negative emotions. Do not listen. You probably already started to experience the resistance, right? You, at this point of this training, through this module, you have stepped into the ring with your current self, and it's now going to start to fight. It is going to start to throw stuff at you. It's going to start to manifest resistance, and that force of resistance will begin to generate pain because now you have to meet it with effort. You have to work in spite of the doubt. You have to face the work in spite of the procrastination. You have to do the work in spite of wanting the support. You have to do the work even when it makes you feel vulnerable or even when it makes you feel scared. You have to do these things, and it's where work meets resistance is pain. And sitting in that pain is what you have to do. That's the trial by fire. If you can withstand the fire and withstand the pain of work plus resistance, you will get what you want. And all you have to do is face that pain and put up with it for long enough for your current self to die and your new way to manifest. Pain is like, the more pain you put yourself in, and by pain I don't mean like mashing up your ankles with a mallet, the more like productive, evolving pain you put yourself in, it's kind of like you suffocate the current self with pain. That's a strong idea. The current self is suffocated by the pain that is a result of resistance in the work. And the more pain you can put yourself in, and the more doubts you can crush, and the more fears you can fight through, and the more times you can do the work, even when your body doesn't want to, the further you suffocate it. So you have to imagine the current self survives without pain, and the more pain you have, the more you suffocate the current self's ability to survive. The current self has all of these psychological weapons. All you have is the work. But let me tell you, the work wins every time. Every time. The work is way more powerful than any form of resistance you can face. It will always win. If you just work, if you do the work in face of the resistance, you will win, because you will generate pain, and that pain will suffocate the current self. And by the way, I know I get a bit passionate about, I know I kind of get into these videos a little bit, and I can get a bit carried away with my tone, but I'm just talking from the heart. I want to keep this as sort of natural as possible, because realizing this stuff has made me millions, and it will make me hundreds of millions, if not billions, in the line. In fact, I've got no doubt that will happen. It's just going to take time. And the fact that I can share this with you, that makes me happy. So when you set a goal, your current self locks horns with your desired self. And this is what happens. Ladies and gentlemen, you remember this, right? From Breaking Your Chains, from the last video, where we talked about your oscillations and the oscillatory nature of life, where you go to one peak and then you go to a trough. And what happens here is when you're facing resistance and when you're in pain, that's when you're on this upwards trend. And when you're not facing resistance and falling down and letting it overcome you, then you're falling down to the trough. And so, like, when your current self and evolving self start having a bit of a battle or a war, because it's really the only form of intercourse possible between them, then this graph starts to manifest. And we talked about flipping the floor and the standards and stuff, and we talked about how to break through this thing. And the real key ingredient is just basically the resistance thing. Because what will happen is, like, you'll get to this point here and you'll start to feel comfortable and proud and happy. And that's just resistance once again. It's not just negative. Like, resistance doesn't just manifest in negative form with doubts and fears and pain and stuff. It manifests with other forms of positive emotion, like pride and comfort. And so it will do everything it can to keep you in your current place. And the current self wins when you give in to its resistance. The work is the key. For as long as you're working on the thing, you are beating resistance. So I don't mean work as in like, I'm going to go and build a website, or yeah, I'm going to go and create some business cards. I mean the work is like, it's the thing that you know you need to do. It's the thing that you're really resisting. Because like, you can go and build a website, or you can go and like, I don't know, you can go and sort of like try and like create some like slides or something, or you can try and start doing, you know what I'm talking about. There are actions that you don't need to do that have no impact on your goal whatsoever. Basically, the key to this is that if the action doesn't create pain, then you shouldn't even bother. Genuinely. Like, if you're doing things that don't create like resistance or pain, then you're probably working on the wrong thing. Now, there are exceptions to this because, you know, like for example, right now I am loving this. I love these videos. I like recording them. I feel no resistance towards recording them at all. But I should still do them. So there are caveats to this, but for the most part, like, you need to be doing the thing that you need to be doing. And so here's a great little image for this. So we've all heard of the story of the knight and the dragon and the damsel in distress in the cave. And, you know, basically what happens here, this is a very strong archetype for a very good reason. On the left, we have your goal, which is to rescue the woman. Or, you know, that's a, you know, what would you call it? That's a generalization, right? You're probably not doing this to rescue a woman, unless you've got a dry vacuum that supports that, of course. But you've got your goal, which is to rescue the damsel in distress in this case. You've got your current self and its resistance, which is the dragon. Then you've got your desired self, which is the knight, and then you've got the lance or the sword, which is killing the dragon, which is the work. So your desired self slays the dragon of resistance through the work. And by slaying the dragon and by doing the work, you accomplish your goal. So let's talk about slaying the dragon, because now that you understand what resistance is, how it manifests, and where it comes from, which is obviously your current self and why it's there. Now let's actually talk about how to slay this dragon, because this picture here is pretty much a summary of all of my points put together, and it's why like the George and the Dragon story is so popular, even though it's so old. Very archetypal. So let's slay the dragon. So what is the work, and why is it our best weapon against resistance? So the work is your only weapon against resistance. When you step into that boxing ring with your current self, the only thing you have, the only thing you can use to fight is the work, right? The work is the only way to keep the resistance at bay and not fall prey to its charming, deceptive nature. I define the work as action. It's having the intelligence to figure out what you need to do and then doing it. In life, there is cause and there is effect. We must cause to effect. The work is the cause of the effect you desire. And your goal is an effect. It's a snapshot of the future and it's born out of the work. To boil it down, the work is basically forcing your body to take a physical action in spite of and against the resistance it has or feels towards taking it. So what I mean here is the work is basically doing the thing you know you need to do. And the cool thing about this is you can't really do the work without the resistance. The resistance, like the goal creates the resistance and the resistance creates the work. Because, well, if you didn't feel resistance, you wouldn't know what to work on. So the work is basically taking the actions you know you need to take. It's not doing things that you know you shouldn't be doing. It's not going and spending 3 days watching YouTube videos on how to do the thing. It's sitting down and actually doing it. And to clarify, I don't mean any old work like, inviting people to like your Facebook page or, making some business cards or, these are resistance actions. So when you start doing stupid stuff like going to get people to like your Facebook page or spending your days like figuring out what color you want your logo to be, that is actually resistance. That's warped priorities, if you remember. And you know what I'm talking about. You've probably done stuff that you shouldn't really be doing. If it's not signing clients or doing sales calls or delivering results, or hiring people, it's probably not really anything that you need to be doing. It's kind of like with the gym or with working out. It's like let's say your goal is to run a marathon and you're not fit at the moment, then running a marathon means you have to become someone that can, right? And so your current self who can't run a marathon doesn't want to do that because it wants to survive. So it starts giving you resistance. And all you really have to do is just go and run. Right? So it's like, if you're like, okay, first day of marathon training, what I'm going to do today is spend the whole day researching what shoes I could buy. When in reality, you should just basically get out there in bloody bare feet if you need to and just start running. Do the research in the evening if you want to. So yeah. And when you work, resistance gets weaker. The stronger the resistance, the weaker it gets after you beat it. Eventually, after having taken daily action on your goal for a long time, you will have transcended yourself. The only path is the work. The only way is the work. So like I said, if we want to kill, we need to kill the current self. It needs to die. The evolving self cannot come to fruition if the current self is still there. It's one or the other. You can't have both. And so the best way to kill the evolving self and to grow and to transcend yourself is to suffocate it with pain. Pain is like what would you call pain? Pain's like the kryptonite of the current self, right? It's the thing that really kills it off. It's like the current self is almost like allergic to the pain. And the more pain you expose it to, the less chance it has of surviving. And so if you want to increase your chances of success, you just increase how much pain you're in. And the only way you can increase how much pain you're in is by applying effort and work to resistance, right? And you will often find that resistance gets stronger the closer you get to the finish line. Your journey through the fire may be 101 miles long. And I can guarantee you that at mile 100, you will face the most resistance possible. Your current self will Hail Mary the shit out of you emotionally. So what I mean here is the closer you get to your goal, the more resistance you will feel. It doesn't get easier the further into the fire you get. The fire gets hotter the closer to the end you actually become, or closer to the end you actually are. And so when you've been doing this for some time, and then suddenly you wake up one day and the doubt is 10 times stronger, the pain avoidance is 5 times more prevalent, and the distractions seem 10 times more appealing, that's when you know you're getting close. Because the harder the current self kicks back and fights, the technically weaker it's getting. It's kind of like just before it's about to die, it really just sort of unlocks beast mode, and then it will just really fight back, and you need to just keep layering on that pain. Just keep on suffocating it with pain. It will be hell. Your current self will do everything it can to stay alive. It knows you. It is you. It'll use your weaknesses, your proclivities, your impulses, your drive, your desires. It will use everything it's got. It will be hell on earth to fight. So remember, when you're going through hell, keep going, right? This is why I'm telling you this. I'm telling you that you need to expect the pain, because the pain is going to happen. The agony, the suffering, the difficulty, the stress, all of that stuff is going to be prevalent, because when you lock horns with your current self, like, you have to do it. And I can tell you what is more painful: not winning. Fucking hurts. It's horrible. But that's why we must win. And that's why we must be strong. And that's why we must do the work. So when you're going through hell, keep going. So what is the work and how do we do it? Well, the work is getting your body to take an action it does not want to take. And the work is doing the thing that you need to do but feel resistance towards doing. So you can't do the work if there's no resistance. This is why, like, we kind of want the current self to exist and we want resistance to be prevalent. Because, like, without resistance, well, what would we work on? We wouldn't. There would be nothing to do. There would be no cause to create an effect. And so the cause you need to, the work is the cause you need to create the effect you want. It's the action that creates the reaction you desire. It's your best weapon, the work. So how do we do the work? Well, let's start with a question. So what I'm going to do now is continue framing this, because the strategies that I'm going to give you here there's no sort of like tangible like strategy. I'm going to give you some towards the end, some like good ways to see, but everything about this depends on your perception. Because if you can alter your paradigm, and we talked about paradigm shifts at the start. You wonder why I put paradigm shifts at the start. This is why. If you can alter your perception of pain and the work and the suffering and the current self and resistance, just by altering how you see it will determine how you act on it, and that will basically, create all this stuff. Because most people see pain as the worst thing possible. I see pain as the best thing possible. I want as much pain as I can possibly get. I want as much resistance as humanly possible, because the more resistance there is, the more work I can do, the more pain I can create, the faster I can suffocate my current self to evolve. So you don't want to see your current self as a negative thing. You want to love that thing, because without your current self, there would be no resistance, there would be no work, there would be no pain, which means there's no evolved self, which means there's no goal. So the key to the goal is to recognize that all of this stuff that we don't want is exactly what we want. And so you have to flip your paradigm and see. And I'm hoping I'm doing a good enough job of articulating this, because it's a beautiful thing to realize and understand. And this is genuinely the big key. This is like the big paradigm shift towards getting what you want. So let's start with a question. What's a knight without a dragon? That's a good question. What is a knight without a dragon? Well, you just have an ordinary man. How could you be a knight without a dragon? How could you be a hero without a dangerous situation to save someone from? There cannot be a knight without a dragon. Sit with that for a second and actually just think about that. It's through having a dragon that a knight can manifest. For there to be a knight, there must be a dragon. The dragon creates the knight. What's a hero without a tribulation? What's an admirable victor without a fierce opponent? The trial by fire creates he who can withstand it. And that's all that's between you and your goal. All that's between you and your goal is pain. And it's through enduring the pain that you get what you want. The pain is the path. So, I want to ask you this. What would your evolving self be without your current self? It wouldn't be anything. It wouldn't exist. What would the work be without resistance? It couldn't exist. There'd be nothing. There'd be nothing to work on, because resistance tells us what to do, right? Everything like this works in a duality. There'd be no knight if there was no dragon. The knight wouldn't be a knight if all he did was just ride a horse down to the cave and pick up the woman. The victor wouldn't be the victor if he didn't have to beat an opponent. When you think about victory in anything, take MMA or fighting, or take cycling or running or any sort of sport, Olympics, how victorious someone is depends on how difficult it was to beat their opponents. Because if you put Vladimir Klitschko, one of the best heavyweight boxers in the world, if you put him in a ring with a 10-year-old boy and he beat the shit out of him, then nobody would think Vladimir Klitschko would technically be a victor, but he probably wouldn't feel like much of a victor. If the knight had to go and slay the dragon, but the dragon was like a baby dragon, it was 1 foot tall and couldn't even conjure up enough flames to light a match, then the night wouldn't be a night. The bigger the dragon, the bigger the challenge, the more nightly the night is, right? The more ugly and horrible and evil your current self is, and the more that thing is just really sucking and really doesn't like give you anything you want, the worse that your current self is, the better your evolving self can be. The pain is the path, and it's through the dragon we become the knight. It's through the current self we become the evolving self. And so you have to recognize this. What's a victor without a strong opponent? Nothing. There's nothing there. So why would you hate the path? You can't hate the pain. You can't hate your current self. You can't hate the resistance. Because if those things didn't exist, well then there'd be no evolving self. Everyone has this tendency to hate pain and resistance in their current self. Like I've told you the current self is the cause of basically the resistance, and the resistance is the cause of the pain. But like I've said, we want the pain because the pain is how we suffocate the current self. But the irony is that the pain couldn't exist without the current self in the first place and without the resistance. So the current self kind of kills itself naturally. But we can't do that without the current self existing, and we can't evolve without being. We can't become without being. The current self is the path to the evolving self. So don't hate it. Everyone has this negative relationship with who they currently are because they see it as the thing that is holding them back. But the reality is that it's actually the thing that's pushing them forward. So you need to rekindle your relationship with everything you believe to be negative. This is the key. The reason I've been so successful in such a short period of time is because I love my current self. Now, not in regards to the fact that I love it for who it is and I'm settled with it and I'm happy with it, because I'll never be happy with who I am, which is quite a contrary thing to state amongst the current society. But I don't hate the pain. I love the pain. When resistance manifests, when I have a really strong doubt, I'm like, oh, thank God for that. Thank God for that resistance. Thank God for the pain that's coming as a result of that. Because without it, I couldn't evolve. I couldn't become. You cannot become without being. You must be to become. Without a dragon, there's no knight. So we need a dragon to slay if we want to become a knight. We cannot be a victor without an opponent. We need to be someone if we want to become someone. Foster gratitude for your current self. It's given you an opportunity. If you didn't have your current self, you'd have nothing to become. It's this understanding that makes me grateful for my current self and everything that it's produced. So looking at this picture on the right here, the guy at the top, Charlie Morgan, I no longer recognize, I am eternally grateful for that person. Because without him, the one at the bottom couldn't have manifested. Think of it this way in sales. Without objections being present, we have no opportunity to close the call. Most people see objections as the thing stopping them from closing the calls, but objections are actually doorways that we can use to close the deal and get the deal across the line. And likewise, you cannot endure pain without resistance being present. Without the fire, we couldn't even have a trial to put ourselves through. Without our current self, we wouldn't have a desired self to become. So be grateful for the fire. Learn to love the pain and the resistance in its source, because without it, you could not become. Everyone hates pain, but I love pain. Pain hurts. And we have this tendency to believe that things that hurt are negative. And sometimes that's true. If you break your arm, or if you get slapped in the face, or if someone breaks up with you, or if a friend stabs you in the back, it's going to hurt. And I'm not talking about pain with regards to physical things, like if you stub your toe and it's painful. That's not good, right? Because pain is actually, it's a feedback mechanism that our brain uses to keep us alive. So pain's actually quite handy. If your partner breaks up with you, or if a child of yours dies, you're gonna endure pain, and it's not, you don't want that sort of pain, is my point. You don't want to go and throw your child off a cliff because you want to feel the pain because you think it's going to grow you. That's not what I'm talking about here. I'll come to this in a bit where we talk about evolving pain. Don't make the mistake of thinking that you want to seek out suffering wherever you can. My point here is this is localized to personal growth and self-transcendence. There's a whole other world of pain that we don't really want to expose ourselves to because it genuinely is horrible and it doesn't do us much good. If a family member dies and you see it as a good thing, you're kind of just being an idiot. So just remember, there's caveats to all of this, and anything taken to its extreme will become its opposite. And we know that pain is effort and resistance. So let's talk about bathing in pain. And I use the word bathing because I really want you to sort of visualize this. I want you to just imagine that you're just going to sit in this thing. You're going to sit in the bath of pain and you're going to love it. It's going to feel amazing. So I'm going to give you an action item, and it's going to sound weird. What I'm about to tell you to do is going to sound a bit strange, and it's not a conventional thing to put into a business training. Obviously, you bought this program to acquire more clients and make more money. I'm going to tell you to do something, and you're going to think it's weird, but I want you to do it because it drills this point home perfectly. I want you to go and find something that you can hold in both hands that weighs, 1.5 to 3 kilograms. It could be like, I've got this water bottle here. It could be like a small bag of sugar, some books, a small speaker. Just go and find something that weighs a couple of kilograms that you can hold in both hands and hold out. It sounds strange, but just pause the video now. Trust me, I know that's a weird thing to ask me to halfway through a mindset video. I'm sort of throwing a curveball here, but go and grab something from your kitchen. I don't know, grab like a pot or a pan or something and come back. Go and pause the video, do that now. So you should have that item, and let's dive in. So now, provided it's safe for you to do so, in a second here, I'm going to ask you to hold this item between your hands and hold it out in front of you with fully stretched arms. So kind of like, you want to grab the thing in between both hands and then just sort of like hold it out. And hold it out in front of you so it's suspended, above the floor, and then gravity is obviously acting down on it, and your shoulders are, locked in holding this thing. Don't do this yet, right? So if you're there, you probably look a bit strange right now, just stood there in the middle of your office, just holding, but don't do it yet. But the point of this is I want you to watch your brain in a second. So you'll notice that the first minute or two, you'll be fine. But as soon as the burn sets in, I want you to notice how your shoulders start to hurt. And then I want you to notice how your brain responds. This sounds weird, I know, but what I want to do with this exercise is bring your conscious awareness to pain and the whole point of resistance and effort. And the easiest way to do this is through this body thing, so trust me. And we want to bathe in the pain, and I want you to watch your brain dredge up resistance to escape it. This might sound weird, right? It kind of is. But we must become aware of our pain avoidance and resistance compliance before we can proceed. So, this is going to sound weird, but what I want you to do is grab this item. Right, I'll do it now with my bottle of water and hold it out between both of your arms, and just stretch your arms all the way out, and so that you're putting muscular stress on your shoulders. And as you're holding it there, I want you to pause this video in a second here. Well, you can maybe just pause it when you start holding it. Watch your brain, right? Because what we're now going to do is we're going to expose our body to pain, and you're going to start to notice resistance. So thoughts like, this is stupid, or that's enough, or I don't really want to do that. You might not even have gone to find something, right? I want you just to sit there with your arms stretched out as you start to feel the burn in your shoulders and watch what your brain does. Just observe, and you'll notice that it's going to start to resist the action of holding the thing out. It will start telling you everything it can to put that damn item down. It will tell you that you've had enough, or carry on with the video. Now, eventually you want to put it down. I don't want you to actually strain yourself or really hurt yourself here. And if you've got issues with your shoulders, you can try a different exercise. But my point here is I just want you to become aware of your pain avoidance loops, and I want you to become aware of how resistance is currently operating when it comes to something like physical exercise. Because the work is quite intangible. You can't really localize that. You can with examples, but you can't really feel it instantly right now. So ignore every time your brain wishes you to sort of stop. I want you to just conquer the resistance. So every time you ignore the brain's wishes, you conquer resistance. Now, don't injure yourself. You don't need to hold it for long, just long enough to experience discomfort and notice how your brain reacts. So pause the video. I know it's weird, but hold the item out in your arms and just watch as your brain goes crazy. So just pause the video now. And you can do this. It doesn't have to be this. You could do a plank. You could just hold a squat position for a while. You could just hold a press up position for a while. Maybe you want to hold a sit up position. Just find something that you can hold that puts your muscles under stress, and then just watch your brain. And it sounds weird, but trust me, do it. So pause the video now and just go and watch your brain. And Now that you should be back and you should have done that, and you might be cursing me for having bad shoulders, but I want you to just to sort of start to reckon, like maybe even write down like what thoughts you had there. Like, what did your brain tell you? What sort of excuses did it use? Did it come up with like, did you start to feel some doubts towards whether or not it was a good idea? Or like what happened basically? I just wanted to bring your awareness to this thing because, the body is quite clever, and the reason it's creating that pain is so that you're not at risk of dying, right? That's usually why pain in the body exists. But that little exercise was just geared towards you becoming more aware of your resistance patterns. And what I want you to do is take that awareness into your work. So when it comes to finishing this video or waking up tomorrow and doing what you need to do, then notice the resistance. So another example of this is pause the video now and go and send a cold email or go and make a cold call. It's a great one, right? Go and find a number of someone in your niche and call them. Do it right now. And I'm saying that to you, and you're going to start. I'm guaranteeing you're feeling resistance right now. Doubt that the person. There's no point because the person's. It's too late for them. Procrastination. I'll do it after the video. Anxiety. I'm afraid of what they're going to say. Distraction. I'm going to do something else. Pause the video now and make a cold call. It doesn't matter what you say. It doesn't even matter like whether it goes well or not. But I just want you to get into the habit of facing resistance and putting yourself through this thing, because I've explained it and you probably feel pretty enlightened by understanding it, but now we need to put it into practice, like immediately like this. I don't want you to sit on this information and I want you to digest it. I don't want you to continue with the video and then just sort of, rest on it and be like, okay, we want to be taking action right now. So go and find a phone number of someone in your niche, call them and say, hey, I want to sell you something. If you've got 30 seconds. And that's all you have to say. And if they say, yeah, sure, then just try and sell them. Just say, well, I can do this for you. And if they hang up, we're not trying to even book a meeting here. We're just trying to overcome the resistance. And the cold calling is a great example because it's so instant and you've probably got so much negative emotion towards it. So go and do it. We just did it with the shoulder thing. You managed to face the resistance and the pain there. It's no different to doing a cold call. Might sound weird. If you're still watching this and you haven't done it yet, please, for the love of God, go and do it. Because I'm not telling you this because I'm taking pleasure out of your misery. I'm telling you because this is the first step. Noticing the resistance, noticing the panic. You probably feel your stomach sinking, you're feeling sick, you're feeling nervous, your heart's starting to beat. Face it. Pause the video and go and make a cold call. Please. If not for you, do it for the person that you're becoming. But just trust me, go and do it. So pain manifests instantly when effort meets resistance. So when you've made that cold call, or when you've held out that item in front of you for a little longer than your body wanted you to, you're going to start to feel resistance. Pain. And knowing how to navigate pain is the secret to this whole thing. So let's talk about pain. So by now, you should have made that cold call. You should have held that item out. If you haven't done those things, then just do them, because the only way to get results is to take action. And if you can't even take an action like that, then after what I've just told you, just trust me, go and do it. So what is pain? Well, I'll start by explaining that there are multiple forms of pain, right? So mainly mental and physical. It hurts to stub your toe and it hurts to get your heart broken. I want it to be extremely clear that this whole video and the next few slides are not intended for you to seek or aim to engage in self-harm or seek situations that cause unhealthy pain in your life. So you might be like, yeah, Charlie said pain's good. So what I'm going to do is every morning I'm going to go and put my hand over some boiling water and burn my hand every morning because I'm growing. No, don't do that. Don't be an idiot. That's not what I mean. Pain is a defense mechanism. Its purpose is to signal to the brain that we need to change something in order to survive or improve our chances of survival. For example, if you break your leg, your body will send distress signals, and pretty strong ones, to your brain to avoid you from further damaging your body tissue. So pain just prevents you from damaging body tissue. Conventionally, and rightfully so, pain protects us. It might suck, but it keeps us alive. But as you've probably noticed, these videos don't deal with conventional and traditional perspectives. The pain we are discussing is what I've dubbed evolving pain. And I had to dub it myself because I had to name this because nobody else is talking about it. There's no literature or anything to describe what I'm discussing here. And once again, to be clear, we do not want to bring unhealthy and unnecessary physical or mental harm to ourselves, right? It's safe to experience evolving pain as a result of meeting resistance with effort, but it's not safe to put yourself in emotionally stressful situations for the sake of feeling pain. And please don't do that. Please don't start, hurting yourself unnecessarily. Please don't start doing stupid things. You want to take yourself to painful places in work and to evolve. And it helps to do that, but you should be seeing my point here. This is not to, take you beyond limits that are healthy. So let's talk about pain. So I've actually got a few points here to do with pain. We've got evolving pain, locking eyes with the monster, familiarity and pain as a compass, the best method to defeat pain, and catching pain avoidance loops. So now that we've sort of worked through the bulk of this video, talking about resistance, we're going to talk about pain, which is obviously what comes as a result of meeting effort with resistance. And we need to sit in pain, right? We now know that we need to tolerate the pain. And it's kind of like, here's the thing. It's like, you've got to imagine that pain is like a swimming pool, right? Pain is the water in a swimming pool. You're getting into that pool with your current self. So there's you, the evolving self in your mind, and then there's your current self. And you're both getting under the water, and whoever can hold their breath for the longest survives. That's really how this thing works. And so we need to learn how to sit in that pain and stay in it. Just imagine that you're getting in, it's like, and you could use any example. Like imagine that you and your evolving self are both doing a plank on the floor, or you're both running. And the first person to stop running, i.e. give in to the pain, is the person that dies. So let's talk about how to deal with this with these 6 points on screen. So evolving pain, just like your body signals pain to the brain to prevent tissue damage, the current sense of self you have signals pain to the body to prevent damage to itself. So it's a signaling thing, right? And the current self is using it just as well as the body does. And this is evolving pain in action. When you start doing something that would grow you, facing resistance and doing stuff, and you feel discomfort and strong mental pain, that's when evolving pain is present. So when you start doing something that would grow you, and you feel discomfort and emotional pain, then you know that you're in evolving pain. That's really the key here. And so that's how the evolving pain thing works. I just wanted to start by differentiating between real, genuine physical and emotional pain that your body is using and your brain is using to signal distressful things that can hurt you if you continue doing them, and evolving pain, which is the pain that we want. Because otherwise people can get mixed up here, and I really don't want the message to be mistaken. So just please have the prudence to differentiate between what I mean by evolving pain and genuine pain that you don't want. So the next thing is you have to lock eyes with the monster. So what do I mean by this? The monster is the pain, right? I'm just going to give you some frames to sort of, the whole point of this is just, it's framing this. So lock eyes. You want to look the monster dead on in the eyes. You don't want to waver in your sight. You want to face the pain. So imagine that sat opposite you right now is instead of sending cold emails, you actually just have to look this really scary monster in the eyes. And you have to just hold the gaze of the monster. You can't look away, even though you want to, even though it terrifies you to look into that thing's eyes, you have to just stare at it. It's the same thing as doing the work. You want to face the pain. You don't want to live in denial. So you don't want to delude yourself. You can't really get away with anything. Denial is, really, it's the cause of most suffering. Denial is when you convince yourself that you don't need to face the pain and can still get the result that you want. That's what denial is. And you don't want to be in denial. So you want to see the truth, and you want to be honest with yourself and objective with yourself here. And if you know you need to do something and you know it needs to be done, don't think for a second that if you can get away with not doing it. Denial is the current self's best friend, because it's the easiest way out of resistance or facing resistance. It's kind of I need to send some cold emails. I'm just going to wait until later on. It's just denial. Every time you're doing that, you're just denying yourself of the truth. And you want to bathe in the pain, right? So learn to love the pain, bathe in it, eat it up, and gorge on it. You want to see pain as this yummy, tasty meal that's sat in front of you. You want to just imagine it's like a nice warm bath. You're just chilling out in the pain. The more relaxed you can be in the face of pain, and the better you can kindle your relationship to be with it, and with evolving pain specifically, the better. And befriend it. Face it every day until your body becomes familiar with it and welcomes it as a friend. You want to be friends with pain. Remember, it's the key, it's the secret, it's the path. So why would we hate it? And it's vital that you recognize that pain is just a signal your current self or old self uses to cling on and survive. It's a real thing, and it hurts. And you can escape the pain, just at the sacrifice of your goal. So this is why I said earlier, like, you can either face the pain now and not have the pain later, which you'll probably still have it. It's kind of just a constant. For anyone who wants to consistently evolve, pain will always be present. But my point is that you can not face the pain now and feel no pain now, but you'll be in pain later, and it will be 10 times worse than if you faced it now. Or you can like face it now and then just do the work, and then it will feel better later on. And this is how the best athletes are trained. So if you look at like the best athletes in the world, like the Michael Jordans and, you know, the Kobe Bryants and stuff, these guys are trained to sit in isometric holds for hours. So an isometric hold is like, it's a type of exercise where you kind of just hold a static position that puts your muscles under stress. And, you know, kind of what I got you to do with the holding the thing out. That's like an isometric hold. And it's excruciating. It's agony. But what we get these athletes to do, or what the trainers get them to do, is they get the athletes to sit in the pain, because this trains them to be relentless. It trains them to condition themselves so that when the pain is present, when it's time to perform, they don't waver or falter. And you need to treat pain in the same way. You must become pain-seeking. So you want to look for as much evolving pain as possible. You want to engulf yourself in evolving pain. You want to bathe in it. Like I said, you want to eat it. You want to gorge on it. You want as much of this stuff as you can. The more evolving pain you can expose yourself to, the faster you become who you want to become. The more intense the pain, the more, like, the longer the pain exists for, the harder you feel the pain, like the intensity of it, the more pain you can have, the faster you'll become who you want. It's just the best weapon you have for like suffocating the current self so you can become someone else. And the best part is that after a while, you're actually going to start to enjoy the pain and the suffering. You will begin to take comfort in discomfort, and you'll be able to derive meaning and pleasure from pain. So I promise you, pain doesn't have to be traditionally painful, right? Like you can actually completely sort of like reverse the meaning of the word. Now, it's always going to hurt and it's always going to suck, but you can actually derive like pleasure and meaning from the sensation of pain and agony and suffering mentally with regards to evolving pain. Obviously, if you break your leg, you're not going to be like, oh my God, I feel that's amazing. You kind of just can't convince yourself to do that. But when you recognize that pain is the thing that you want and it does help you, then you start to want it. And that's where I'm at now. Like, I want the pain. Like, my favorite exercises to do are like really intense, like all the way to failure, as painful as possible, because I know that that's what helps me grow, and that I can take that relationship with pain from my workouts and put it into my work. And you know, it's possible to love pain. And this shift only happens when you open your mind to the idea that all the suffering, agony, and pain is productive and helpful. Because without pain and suffering, you cannot become. It's the ingredient, and pain is the growth. Pain is growth. It's a synonym for evolution. If you want to grow, develop, and evolve, the only path you can take is pain. So fucking face it, right? Get up every day and lock eyes with the monster. You want to look at it. You want to lock eyes, and you don't want to unlock your eyes. You want to look at that monster. You want to look at the snake in the eyes. You want to, face the fear. You want to do it. And this sounds like a motivational little talk here, but I'm telling you, like, it really is just the secret. And you want to seek pain everywhere, right? You want to apply effort to resistance everywhere in your life, not just at work, but in your relationships, in your exercise, in your diet, in your sleep. Everywhere you can see resistance, you want to face it, because you want to build like a pattern, because the brain uses patterns to behave. And if you're going to the gym and working out and you're not working out properly, then your brain will use the same sort of like algorithm to conduct its work. So you want to seek pain everywhere. Pain avoidance in other areas of your life will manifest in your business. Pain conditioning is a universal neurological rule. If your workouts are half-assed and lazy, this will seep into your work. If you decide to lay in instead of facing the day every now and then, this will seep into your work. So you can't just become like a pain-seeking missile machine in your work. You kind of need to do it everywhere. So every opportunity you have with resistance. Like I used to have this with relationships, to be transparent with you. I used to really struggle with intimate connection and building relationships. And it was one of my biggest struggles for a long time. And every time I would get close to a relationship and loving someone, I would feel this insane resistance, like real, true, genuine panic and fear and resistance. And I realized that, okay, well, this has this resistance thing. Behind that resistance is a huge amount of growth. And so I met it with effort, and now I'm really happy with my relationship and I don't have that problem anymore. And I could take that sort of algorithmic potential and that like set of rules and conditioning and apply it to my work. And I found that by doing that, my work became even better and I made even more money. And so like if you've got something in your life, like, you know, with your room, maybe you've got a really untidy room or really untidy office, and you've got resistance to cleaning it. It's like, well, there's resistance. It's universal. It doesn't really matter if it's work or, you know, washing up your bowls in your sink, you know, keeping everything clean. Like your brain it can't differentiate between sending cold emails and washing up. It will use the same set of rules for everything. So if you want your work to be productive, and if you want your life, like if you want to face the pain in your work and face the resistance in your work and meet resistance with effort to create pain to drown out your current self, then you need to be doing that everywhere in your life. Everywhere. Otherwise, you're just kind of screwed, because like one chink in the armor will bring everything down. And pain is raw potential. It's the universe telling you what to do. The more evolving pain you feel, the most you are evolving. It's direct feedback from the universe. So imagine this for a second. This is interesting. Imagine if every time you faced the pain, you were rewarded with $100 in cash. You'd face it all the time. So if it was like, send cold emails, make $100, you would do the cold emails, maybe more. But the thing is that you actually are. So the rewards really do exceed $100. You can trust me on that. Like every time I send a cold email, like we figured it out, we make like $100 or whatever. Might not be exactly accurate, but like with YouTube, I figured out that every time I make a YouTube video, I make like $3,000. We sort of reverse engineered the numbers. And like YouTube videos are sometimes painful to make. So every time I face the pain of making a YouTube video, I make $3,000. And that's a result of having like 100 videos and making like $300,000 in course sales from YouTube. It's kind of like you can reverse engineer these things, and every time you face the pain, you make money. So you've got to rekindle your relationship with evolving pain to love it. Fall in love with the pain with familiarity. This is the next point. So you like and love what is familiar with you or to you. So if you've ever wondered why you love someone so much, it's just because they've served you a lot of impressions. The only way your brain can really love something is like whether or not it's familiar. Like seriously, at a base level, the only mechanism the brain uses to determine how much it likes something is how often it's exposed to it. And like, you know, if you love pasta, well, it's probably just because pasta has served you a lot of tasty impressions, right? This goes back to the whole negative emotional experiences and positive emotional experiences we've had to build beliefs. The same is true for emotions, right? A lot of depressed and anxious and worried people stay that way because their brain becomes familiar with emotions. Now, they may not like the feeling of depression or anxiety, and they may not feel comfortable with that, and it may feel horrible, but their brain doesn't really care because their brain just wants to keep producing what it's already produced. And so the person may dislike feelings from their states, but since it's what their neurochemistry is familiar with, they'll always default back to this state because the brain likes familiarity, it likes predictability. Even if it's in pain, it will stay that way. Take someone who's always stressed. You know, they don't always want to be stressed, but because they're familiar with it, they'll always default back to being stressed. You can change this, by the way, and that's obviously the whole purpose of this mindset module, is to take your way out of these states. But you can take advantage of this familiarity bias the brain has. If you are always in evolving pain, then you will eventually settle into a familiarity with it. This is the best advantage I have. I absolutely cherish the evolving pain. I love the suffering, and I find great meaning and joy in overcoming it. Like, I'll basically skip to work. I'll skip to the gym knowing I'm about to do a disgusting workout. And it's not because, like, I don't like the pain. Sorry, it's not because it's not going to be painful, because it is. It's because it's going to be painful that I love it so much. That might sound masochistic. It truly is. Like, not from a sexual sense, but genuinely, this is the secret, is just to, like, expose yourself to so much evolving pain that eventually you'll evolve, and then you'll attribute the evolution to the pain, and then you'll want to get more and more of it. It's kind of hard to do in the initial stages, but if you face this for long enough and start to evolve because of it, then you'll attribute your new emotional state and feeling great to the pain, and that's how you fall in love with this thing, and that's how familiarity generally creates this response. And, you know, I had to overcome pain and resistance to put these slides together in the last 20 minutes. You know, it took some time. And, you know, with making these slides, it was quite painful. It didn't feel great to make them, but like, I can derive pleasure and happiness from that feeling of discomfort because I've done it so often. And this is basically Stockholm Syndrome. Stockholm Syndrome is basically where, like, you can get kidnapped, and like, hate the kidnapper, but then when you get rescued, you want to go back to the kidnapper. Like, it's actually a thing. You can Google Stockholm Syndrome. It's really kind of fucked up, but it basically explains how this familiarity thing works. Like you can love what you think you hate, genuinely. And you can brainwash your brain to love pain. It just takes a few years. And just know that it's possible. And trust me, if you expose yourself to a certain state for a long enough period of time, you'll always default back to it. So you can actually manipulate your states. If you put yourself in evolving pain a lot, then eventually you will want to be in evolving pain all the time. Because Stockholm Syndrome, like, that's how it works. Familiarity will always default back to what it knows. And so, like, right now, if you're always in a state of comfort, then you always default back to comfort, and we want to try and fight that, and that's what we're doing with this module. But you want to try and put yourself in so much evolving pain that eventually, like, it's all you really want to do and be in. And eventually you'll just want to be uncomfortable, and you'll find comfort in that. Because we find comfort in what's familiar, and so for whatever reason, that's how the brain works, so we can hack this. So the next thing is that pain is a compass. If your work is pain-free, then you're working on the wrong thing, or you're just not doing it with enough intensity. If there's no pain, there's no growth. It's really that simple. If you ever find yourself working on something that feels easy, pain-free and comfortable, then you're going to be in some trouble for down the road. But there's a caveat to this, because there's going to be parts of your business and parts of your work that you really enjoy. So for example, I really like sales calls, and I find sales calls easy and pain-free. They still grow my business. So there's a caveat to this, right? I really enjoy the calls. I also enjoy recording these videos. And sales calls and recording these videos, like the actual physical act of recording them, are two like instrumental parts of my business growth. It's just that at the start, I really hated both of them. But now that I've done them for so long, I actually love them. So you can rewire your brain like this. But generally speaking, whatever you feel the strongest levels of resistance and pain towards is exactly what you need to be working on. So if you feel huge resistance to outreach and that's the only thing you don't want to do, it's the only thing you should be doing. And this is the easiest way to figure out what you need to do and what actually constitutes the work. So I have questions all the time from people like, Charlie, what should I be working on? Like, where should I be putting my attention and where should I be working? And the answer is wherever you feel like is going to be the most painful. And the reason pain is a compass is because your current self will muster up the most pain for the activity that has the biggest potential to kill it. So your current self and your consciousness knows like what's going to threaten it the most, and whatever is going to threaten it the most is what it's going to kick up a fuss about the most. So just do that. And it will wrap the most important activities in a huge shroud of resistance and then burn you like hell when you try to do it. This is why everyone struggles with appointment booking and outreach. This is why appointment booking and sales are the two biggest problems for new business owners or people, just anyone in general trying to grow a business. It's why they struggle so much with acquisition. It's not because it's a hard thing to learn or do. It's because it's like the main thing that would kill their current self. So if you've ever wondered why you struggle so much with appointment booking and sales and cold email and cold messaging and why it's so hard for you to do things that generate clients, it's because, well, generating those clients would result in a different self, and that'll be killing your current self. And so the reason you feel all this resistance towards those activities is because they are the main thing that will help you grow. Notice that. Notice this and recognize that the most painful activities are the most important ones to getting what you want. Appointment booking isn't hard. Sales isn't hard. You make it hard with how much resistance you meet it. And the reason that happens is because your current self recognizes those activities as the most threatening to its survival. If you're ever stuck on what to work on, just look no further than whatever it is you're resisting the most, and deep down, you know what you need to do. You know what you need to do, right? If we're really being honest with ourselves, we know what we need to work on. We know what that thing is. So fucking face it, right? So the best method to defeat pain is love. Love will win every time, right? Nietzsche said, he who has a why can bear almost any hell, right? So you have to love who you are becoming. You have to fall in love with your evolving self and tie your heart to it. You want to really love and cherish who you are becoming. You want to really love and cherish the evolving self, because if you can do that and you can love and cherish the evolving self, then you're working for someone else who's not yourself. The problem with working for your current self and working for yourself at the moment is because you may not like yourself, right? You know what you've done and you know what you deserve and what you don't deserve. And deep down, you probably aren't too happy with the person you are right now, which is why you're watching these videos. If you're working for yourself, then you're always going to self-sabotage because you're going to be sabotaging who you hate. It's easy to sabotage who you hate. It's hard to sabotage who you love. So you want to work for your evolving self, not your current self. And you want to treat yourself as though you are someone responsible taken care of. You know your current self and how it operates, and you probably don't like it. So, there's no real excuse for sabotage in that case. So just get to work. It's really nasty one to navigate, because a lot of people don't like themselves because they know what they're like and they know what their flaws are and they know where they fall short, and they see themselves as someone unworthy of success. So this is why we have to create an evolving self, so we can look at that person and think, that's my hero. There's a saying that I think Warren Buffett says that everyone should have a hero. Fuck that. Just have your hero should be your evolving self. I think Warren Buffett was right there, but Warren Buffett should have said, and perhaps I'm challenging one of the richest men on earth, so take this with a pinch of salt, but what Warren Buffett should have said is, everyone should have a hero, and that hero should be you. And you want to source your dopamine from the process, not the result. So love is kind of just a chemical reaction. It's just oxytocin, basically, for intimate relationships usually. But love is kind of just a concoction and a cocktail of different neurological, neurochemical, what would you call them? Transmitters and stuff, like dopamine. And so you want to source your dopamine not from actually being the person who can, but becoming the person who can. So you want the evolution to create the dopamine, not the actual result of the evolution itself. And most importantly, you need to love your current self for giving you the opportunity to grow. This may sound backwards, but we've talked about this. You don't want to love yourself in the sense you're settling and love something you secretly hate, but you need to channel love and gratitude towards your current identity, for it is the dragon that allows you to be the knight. Without it, there couldn't be a trial, and there would be no pain, which means no growth. And catching pain avoidance loops. So this is a really simple one. You want to work on becoming more aware of your resistance patterns and pain avoidance loops. So once again, if you want to do it again, pause the video, make a cold call, right? You'll feel the same resistance, but just keep doing that. Find something that you really resist and just consistently face it over and over and over again. Because the more you do that, the more pain you put yourself in, the stronger you become. And the stronger your evolving self becomes, the weaker your current self gets. So every time you just catch yourself feeling down, just take some action, right? So this is actually the key. If I can isolate what I did all the time when I started Imperium, this was the main thing. So work on becoming more aware of your resistance patterns and pain avoidance loops. So the single most important thing I did when starting Imperium, every time I felt the urge to stop sending emails or cold messages, or every time I doubted the business, or every time I doubted myself, or every time I felt procrastination to the work, or every time I wanted an accountability partner first, every time I started doing some research, every time I started getting distracted, whenever there was resistance, in any form at all, even if it was 3 a.m, whenever there was resistance, I would open up my phone and send more outreach. This is the single most important thing that I did in starting Imperium and also NorthFlow. Whenever resistance manifested anywhere, in any form, in any shape, I would notice the resistance and I would do the action that grew the business. Because I knew that by doing that, it was painful, but I knew that pain would eventually subside and it would allow me to grow. And if I hadn't done that, I wouldn't be where I am today. So every time I felt a negative emotion towards appointment booking, I'd go and send more messages. If I was worried about opening my inbox to find no replies, I'd open my inbox and send more emails, right? Every time you notice resistance, fight back with the work. So don't let yourself sit on it. If you're sat there at 6 p.m. after having finished work and you suddenly start feeling huge amounts of doubt, go and send emails, go and make cold calls, go and do outreach, right? Anytime that you feel resistance towards growing your business or becoming he who can or she who can, go and do the single most important activity to the growth of that thing, and just do that for 3 or 4 months, and I promise you will be where you want to be. Maybe not in 3 or 4 months, it might take longer, but just building that sort of it's like an if this then that statement. It's like classical conditioning. Feel resistance, do work. Most people feel resistance, do nothing. But if every time you feel resistance, you can train yourself to immediately retaliate with the work, then you will crush it. It's when you wait an hour. It's there's some resistance, some self-doubt. Okay, I'm going to wait and do those cold emails later. No. Even if it's I don't care if it's 1 a.m. and you're still having all these self-doubts, open up Messenger and start sending messages. Open up LinkedIn and start sending connection requests and sending things. Make cold calls to bloody Australia if it's too late at night. Just every time you feel resistance, do the thing that you need to do. Do that for a few months and you will completely change your life. I promise you. The first step is awareness. The second step is intolerance. Finally, let's talk about the general's perspective. This is I'm going to give you a little skill here and something you can learn to do that will completely change your life. I'm hoping this video is, life-changing enough as it is, but I want to give you a little strategy. and another little frame that might help you face the pain and do the work. You must learn to control your body. The body is your physical state. It's the combination of all your emotions and resistances, and it's basically like, the thing that you tell the body what it needs to do, and then it kicks up a fuss. So there is the puppet and there is the puppeteer. There is the character and there is the player. There is the soldier and there is the general. There is the body and there is the mind. The first ones here, these are the body. So most people are slaves to their body. The body wants to do something and the mind gives it. The body doesn't want to work, the mind turns a blind eye. The body wants to binge Netflix for a day, the mind complies. The body feels nervous, the mind lets it off. The body is like the puppet, right? So you have to, if we look at this on the left with this puppet and the hand with the strings, your body, like most people's body and most people's character or puppet is pulling the strings of the hand instead of it being the other way around. So you need to remember that you are pulling the strings. It's kind of like your mind is the hand and your body is the puppet. And like right now, your body, the puppet, is probably actually determining what the hand does instead of it the other way around. Like your hand's probably forgotten that it's got the ability to even like pull the strings on this thing. And it's the same with like it being a character and a player. And if the body is running the show, then you will fail. You must learn to flip this relationship and control the body. So in green here, right, really successful people do not let their body run them. They pull the strings, they move the joysticks, and they send the soldier into battle. Their mind sets the action, their body complies. If the mind is running the show, then you'll win. The mind wants the body to work out, the body goes to the gym. The mind demands a 12-hour workday, the body gets it done. So you want to see yourself as the general and your body as the soldier. You want to see yourself as the player of the video game and your body as the character. You want to see yourself as the puppeteer, the hand, and your body as the puppet. And so you have cognitively, in terms of your mind, the ability to pull the strings, to send the soldier into battle, and to tell the character what to do, instead of the other way around. You have that ability, you just have to recognize that you do. Most people, they forget they are the general. They forget they are the mind. They forget they're the player. They forget they're the puppeteer. They just think that they are this puppet or this character in the soldier of the body, and they just let this thing run wild. When in reality, you need to learn how to switch this around and change it around, because if you're not careful, your character, your body will completely run the show. And if your body's running the show, then, well, you're never going to face the resistance because it doesn't want to. And when you try to take the reins of the body, it will scream and kick. But that's where action stacking comes in. So I'm going to give you a little strategy here, because it feeds back into this sort of doing the work thing. So mind and body, most people are slaves to their body. That's not what we want. When you try to control the body and send it into battle, it will kick and scream. And it's essential you don't listen to its screams, right? Now, this is where action stacking becomes helpful. This is where you double, triple, or quadruple, or even 10x down on what you ask the body to do. If you tell the body to do 10 calls and it starts freaking out, force it to do 30. If it throws more resistance for 30, force it to do 100. So in other words, just pause the video, go and make a cold call right now. And if the body is freaking out and you're feeling huge amounts of resistance to doing one cold call, make it do 10. If it does 10, it's still freaking out, make it do 100. This is called action stacking, and it's one of my favorite strategies for overcoming resistance and getting my body to basically comply. Because, if I'm running and I'm there's a few examples down here at the bottom actually. I'll go to the running one in a second. So when I started, I was terrified to send cold emails, and I set myself a target for 20 a day, and my body would resist 20 emails a day, so I made it do 40. And it got to 35 and started kicking again, so I made it do another 40. This is how we get compliance from the body, take control and beat resistance. So if I'm going for a 10 kilometer run and my body starts kicking up a fuss, I'll push it to run 15 kilometers. And if my mind says a 1 minute plank and my body says no, then I'll extend the plank to 2 minutes and make the body do 2. Eventually, the body will learn who's boss, and it will know that by kicking up a fuss or fighting back results in even more of what it doesn't want to do, thus building compliance. So the easiest way to we don't want to enslave the body, that's the wrong metaphor, but the easiest way to get the body to comply with the mind's wishes is to teach the body that when it kicks back, it has to do more. So eventually it stops kicking back and it stops fighting. Because if I tell my character or my body or my puppet, hey mate, 100 sales calls or 100 cold calls, it knows that if it fights that, then I'll make it do 200. right? It just knows. It's learned it's like an animal. It's learned that fighting back results in double the pain. So now I have no issue setting things and doing things because like I'm always trying to extend this and like improve like myself. So like with these mindset videos, I've really gone the extra mile and my body kicked up a fight. And I was like, all right, mate, well, let's make each video like 2 to 3 hours long. And let's really dig into the depths of the trenches here psychologically. And then when it kicked up a fuss about that, I was like, all right, well, we're going to go into everything. And when it kicked up a fuss about that, then I'd go into even more. And then eventually it just stops fighting because it knows that the more it fights, the more you give it. And so you want to do this with like cold calls or outreach. Like find the thing that you're resisting right now, go and do 10 of them. And like if you're afraid of doing cold emails, then go and do 20. And if it kicks up a fuss at 20, do 100. There's no you can take this thing to too much of an extreme because eventually you can really hurt yourself. If you're like if your body's kicking up a fuss at a 10-kilometer run and you make it do 100 kilometers, you might run yourself into some problems. But my point here is that you can't really take it too far when it comes to these sort of like intangible business efforts. And here's a good way to remember this, a good metaphor. So when your body, like when you say, all right, body, 100 cold calls, or all right, body, 50 outreach messages, or all right, body, go and record this video. Like when it gives you resistance, when it shows up like and gives you resistance, you want to give it more. So here's the best metaphor. When your body shows its fists for a fight, pull a kitchen knife. If it pulls a bigger knife, pull a pistol. If it pulls a pistol, pull a machine gun. If it pulls a machine gun, pull a grenade launcher. So what I mean here is like when your body shows its fists, you show a knife. If the body's like, I've got a bigger knife, then you show a gun. If it shows a gun, then you show a bigger gun. And you just want to keep doing that until it runs out of stuff to show you. That's how I see this. Because you can defeat fists with a knife, you can defeat a knife with a bigger knife, but you can't defeat a bigger knife with a gun, but you can defeat a gun with a bigger gun, right? So you just constantly layer it on an action stack more and more. So if it's like, Charlie, I don't want to do 50 sales calls, you can do 100. Don't want to do 100, you do 200. And you just keep doing that until it learns to stop fighting. And this is genuinely the easiest way to build compliance from your body and your character. And eventually you can learn to pull the strings. And if we go back to this like puppet thing, you can learn to become the hand and stop being run by the puppet. It's really cool. So a couple more points. If I go in here. So the caveat is that to remember that you have biological limits and they're not much fun to meet. You need to trust me on that. So you want to still set and stick to a routine for relaxing and having downtime. There's only so much your body can take before it breaks and sends you into burnout. So I've burned out before and it's very unpleasant. And by burned out, I don't mean like I've just worked till I'm a bit tired. I've genuinely worked to the point where I've had to go to doctors with like serious like psychological dissociative psychological problems. To the point where I've worked so much that my cortisol levels are so high that I can't even get out of bed. And I've actually taken myself to that point and it is really horrible. And that's what happens when you pull too much on your body. You have to remember that your body has nukes. Your body will and can win, right? But it will kind of secretly wants to be pushed and pushed and pushed. So like you have to realize that if you don't give your body a break, and if you're like 7 days a week just like constantly like on this thing, like giving it 10 times what it wants to do, it will eventually just like die, right? That's the truth. If I just kept working through that state of burnout, I would literally probably die. Like my stress would just be so high that I have a heart attack or something. I've only been there once and I'm never going to go there again. And this is like a big lesson. Don't take this to an extreme. Like you want to take it to an extreme, but not the extreme. So, set and stick to a routine for relaxing and having downtime. You like if you aren't careful, your body will just not allow you to do anything. So the key, don't beat yourself up for having limits. Allow your body to recover and rest. Right? Reward it for its compliance. Like every now and then you can go and have some fun. Every now and then you can go and like watch some YouTube, or every now and then you can play some video games. There's nothing wrong with giving like intermittent reward. The thing is that the general knows when the soldier is too tired to fight. And one day the soldier may shoot the general when he isn't looking if pushed too far. Even video game characters need to rest, sleep, enjoy and recover. Right? Take action stacking to an extreme at your peril. So it's a good tool to have, and you want to have the prudence to not use it to an extreme. Because if you keep using it and your body just like eventually you'll learn, like you'll figure out like where your limits are. Like when you when you feel like, just like, I used to have this like nauseous thing where I put my body through so much stress that eventually it just I'd wake up every morning and basically like be sick because I'd put myself through so much work, and I'd have panic attacks all the time, and like I got really skinny, and like I was in this constant state of brain fog, and I felt like I was completely disassociated from reality. I've been there, and it took me like 3-4 months of no work to recover from that, and it wasn't worth it, but I wanted to see where my limits lied, and I would not recommend you do that. So when you feel like, the body will try to pull some smart ones on you and convince you you're burning out. I can't tell you when you're burning out, only you know that, but sometimes it's better to be safe than sorry. So don't sacrifice your body and your general health and well-being to get what you want faster. It's not worth it. You have to remember that, like, it's kind of like you have biological limits and you can only drive as fast as the road allows you to drive. Okay? So be careful. So let's talk about another kick-ass method to get the work done, build compliance in the body, and face the pain. And this is the last point. It's called the general's perspective. This is awesome. The general's perspective is where you take a third-person view on yourself. This makes managing pain 10 times easier. And when you're feeling resistance and huge levels of negative emotion, it helps to pull yourself into the third person and visualize your body and your environment. And this is kind of like awesome. Let me explain this. Like, life is a video game. So the best way to visualize this is to see your life as some sort of video game. And when things get tough, you can take yourself out to the third person. So you don't want to take yourself out to the third person forever, because it's just you can't live like that. But when you're really going through the pain, and when you really are in that state of like real agony, when you're like 100 cold calls deep and you've got 200 more to make, third person it. And I'm going to explain how. So in the video game, you have the character, then you have the joysticks. And the joysticks, you have the thumbs on the joysticks, and the thumbs will tell the character what to do. And it does so without complaint. The character will need to rest and relax from time to time, but for the most part, that sucker just does what the thumbs on the joystick say. And this is hugely important. It's a really good thing to have as an entrepreneur. It allows you to step back and analyze your decisions, emotions, and actions to get a more rational view on things. And as entrepreneurs, we have no boss. We have no one to answer to, no one to hold us accountable. So you need to learn to analyze your own actions and pain avoidance tendencies, as no one else will. So, like, if I didn't have Bo as my business partner, I would probably burn out all the time. Because Bo knows me, and he knows when to say, hey, Charlie, like, give yourself a fucking break, man. And like, with this third person thing, with the general's perspective, if I'm like feeling loads of emotion, let's say like someone does something really horrible, like a client does something awful. I mean, this has never happened with Imperium. We've never had like negative relationships with clients. But like, if something really, really wrong, and then like my sales rep like quit, and then my business partner like quit, and then everything went wrong, and I got like 10 refund requests at once, like that would create a lot of pain and a lot of emotion, and I'd probably want to just go and hide. But you need to face the pain and the resistance. And if you're not careful, you can make mistakes in those situations. So by being able to take yourself out to the third person and look at yourself like you're looking down on yourself, as opposed to being in the brain, you're like looking on the brain, you can make better decisions and you can sit through painful situations. I do this a lot when running. So this is a skill you develop. It helps to create stressful stimulations, right? Simulations. So for example, like running, planking, isometric holds, any sort of endurance sport, you want to sort of find like an exercise, because the physical way is the best way to do this because it allows you to simulate it. But like, go for a run and like just watch yourself running in the third person. I'm going to explain how to practice this in a second and how to actually get started with this. But like, you want to find like a monotonous sort of activity that doesn't require much thinking, and then take yourself to that activity, like running, for example, or swimming or cycling. And then when you're doing it and when you feel the burn and feel the pain, just imagine yourself looking over your shoulder like a meter away, just watching yourself run down the road. It's a weird thing to do, but it really helps you disassociate from the pain and just basically sit with it for longer. So let's give it a go. You can take whatever angle feels most natural. For me, it's over the left shoulder or to the left directly. And there's some steps below. So let's actually try and visualize you right now. So you are where you are. You're sat down or stood up at your desk and just watching this video. I want you to shut your eyes, and this is an action item for you, and we're going to visualize you in your current state. Now, you might not be in any pain right now. You might be in a bit of pain. It doesn't really matter. The main thing is just getting started with this visualization. So you'll have a natural angle. For me, I can see myself in third person better from the left, right? So from the left side of myself, I can see myself at like directly behind me, from like behind my head, over to the left shoulder, or I can see myself like directly opposite me to the left. Whatever comes most naturally is what you should pick. If I tried to imagine myself from the right, it just wouldn't feel weird. The reason behind that, by the way, is because I have a belief that my left angle of my face and my body looks better than my right side. So all of the pictures I take of myself are usually of the left side of my face. So you probably have you have your good side and your bad side, depending on how you feel about yourself. And you'll probably find it's easier to visualize yourself from the good side. So I've seen so many pictures of myself where I'm tilting my head left, which is why I can visualize myself better in the left. So if you're wondering like right or left, that's a good way to start. But anyway, enough of that. So we got 6 steps. Step 0, right? Do these right now. So stand up and walk over to where you want to third person view yourself from. So take a mental snapshot of the space and key details. So stand up right now, out of your desk. I know this is weird. I've got you to hold like a bag of sugar in front of yourself and write down what you feel resistance to, but just trust me, this stuff is great. Go over to like where you want to see yourself from. So it could be like a meter away from you from behind. Maybe you want to see yourself over to the right, to the front a bit. Doesn't really matter which angle you take, okay? I find that the third person over the shoulder is the best because I used to play a lot of third person video games and it's what is usually most intuitive. So go and stand over there. Go and stand where you want to see yourself from and just look at the environment, right? Now, we're not going to imagine yourself in the environment, although you could stand there and technically imagine yourself in the environment if you wanted to, but just look at it. And I want you to get a mental snapshot, just sort of like blink your eyes as if you're taking a picture of it, right? Sounds weird. Notice the key details. So any colors, anything that's out of place, anything that's weird. Then I want you to come back to your desk and sit down. And I want you to shut your eyes and I want you to put your hands over your eyes so it's dark, right? We want to sort of see pitch black basically. So you can turn the lights off or whatever, but you want to be in this sort of pitch black environment. So, put a t-shirt over your face or just like hands over the eyes. So it's really dark. You shouldn't see anything at all. No light coming into the eyes. This is the key. Eventually you'll be able to do this with your eyes open, but for now, just pitch black. Now, imagine yourself sitting or standing in the position that you were just in. So take yourself out of this is going to take some practice and it feels weird, but I promise, even if you get a grainy image, it's really good. Imagine yourself sitting or standing a meter or so away from your body in the position you were just in. Now, with your eyes closed, I want you to visualize a micro detail relevant to your environment. So it could be the color of your t-shirt, it could be a watch, it could be your hands over your eyes, it could be the color of your fingernails, it could be a watch, it could be the water bottle, anything, right? The name on the water bottle or the weird bag of sugar you've got from doing that strange exercise. Just notice one specific detail in that environment. Now, from that detail, paint the picture of the macro. This is where it gets hard, but you should be able to take one detail and then you should, because you can't really have that detail in the environment without visualizing the rest of the environment. You need the macro to support the micro. So you can visualize the micro in detail, but the macro will probably be quite grainy. Now what you need to do is try and separate yourself from the micro and allow the macro to naturally manifest. Don't necessarily try to see the thing, just shut your eyes and imagine standing in that position you were just in and looking at yourself with your hands over your eyes, looking like a bit of an idiot, okay? Do that. Now you want to start, now that you've got this grainy image of yourself, and it won't be perfect, it'll probably be quite rubbish, now you need to start visualizing the detail in the environment. So now I want you to start noting your posture, your desk, the chair you're in, right? What's in the background? What can you see? What colors at the wall? Are you hunched over? Are you sat up straight? Is your head forward? Is your head back? Are you relaxed? Do you look tense? Are your feet on the floor? Are they slightly off the floor? Are your legs crossed? Just start to notice the physical behavior and position that you're currently sat or stood in. And now that you have a solid image, take a physical action. So now, for example, just shrug your shoulders, right? Like actually shrug your shoulders physically, okay? And from that third person's perspective, observe the shoulder shrug. So I'm going to just shut my eyes and put my hands over my eyes and shrug my shoulders. And in my image, in my mind, the shoulders are also being shrugged. And then maybe you want to lean to the left, right? And then observe in the third person, your body leaning to the left and then lean to the right. And you can start to play around with this. And you may struggle to achieve this and get clarity to begin with. And it may feel like you're looking at yourself through one of those Nokia brick phone cameras that only has like 144p quality to begin with. But this is enough to separate yourself. You need to work on this skill. Eventually, you will be able to do this with open eyes, in the thick of some serious pain, resistance, or negative emotion. And you want to try giving it a go, like we did with the exercise earlier. Go for like a run, hold a plank, get into a squat position, and like third person yourself out and watch. If you're screwing up your face in the pain, watch that. It sounds weird, and it is weird. This is not a conventional thing to do. But the general's perspective is an incredible skill to have, because being able to third person yourself allows you to separate yourself from yourself. And it's kind of like if you look at an athlete on the TV running and they're in pain, you can see they're in pain, but you don't feel it, which means that it doesn't affect you, which means the athlete is just sitting in it. It sounds strange, but just give it a go. It's a great skill to have, and I use it a lot. And so next time your body starts throwing fists, take yourself to the general's perspective, and from that view, order the body to do more and calm down. So if you're like, I need to make cold calls, I'm panicking, take yourself out of the third person and then start to watch your hands dial the phone, watch your hand pick the phone up, and then watch as your mouth speaks the words. You're not really doing it, you're just allowing yourself to do it and watching yourself do it. It's a great skill to have, and it works really well. That's everything for this video. That is trial by fire. The main thing to do right now is action. As much action as humanly possible. Go and do the work. Find the thing that you need to do, that you're feeling resistance to, that even by me suggesting you should do it makes you feel sick to the stomach. Go and do it. Do it now. Don't put it off. Don't listen to anything in your mind telling you should do it later. I don't care what doubts you have. I don't care how you feel. Your emotional, like I said before, your emotional situation and state is not of the universe's concern. It doesn't matter how you feel. What matters is that you do it. So cold calls, cold emails, whatever you can conjure up to be the most painful to getting you what you want right now is what you should go and do right now. And when you do 5 of them or 10 of them or 20 of them, if you still feel pain, do 100 and just keep doing it. Make it a habit every day. Every time you feel resistance in any form, go and do the work. Do the thing that you know you need to do to get the result you want. So once again, this is all the resistance. You're going to have to watch this video multiple times, by the way. Anytime any of these ones crops up, anytime you feel comfortable, anytime you feel like you need to learn something before you do it, any of these things, go and do like cold calls or cold emails. Or anytime you're doing anything, just start taking action, and I promise it's the best and most effective way of doing it. And this is like just the big key. So that is trial by fire. Do the work, face the pain, love the resistance, and you will get what you want. And just remember, train yourself to meet resistance with the work. So every time you feel a doubt, every time you feel an anxiety towards your work, every time you catch yourself procrastinating, become hyper aware of resistance, and every time it shows its head, go and do the work. Right? Pick an action, like sending cold messages, making cold calls, sending cold emails, or something. Pick an action that's actually going to help you get clients and grow, or the thing that you need to do. And every single time you notice the doubt or the fear or the comfort, every time that comes into play and you notice it, go and take the action that basically creates the pain, because it's the easiest and fastest way. Genuinely, like if you take one thing away from this module specifically, that's the action item. Just become aware of every time you feel resistance, and every time you feel it, go and do the work. So if you've just sent 10 cold messages and you start worrying about whether anyone's going to reply, open up your phone and send 10 more. Or if you've sent cold emails yesterday and this morning you're like, oh, I don't want to send cold emails. Don't wait until later, just do it now. And genuinely, it's the best thing that ever, like the best strategy that I ever developed for doing the work and growing myself and getting out of my situation. Every time resistance showed its face, I trained my body to meet resistance with work. You can either meet resistance with compliance or work. Pick wisely. I'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.